The gentle music flowed through the quiet room. This was a place for tea. Leo was on his third steeping, and it was excellent, smooth, refreshing. He waited for the kettle to heat again, ready for the fourth. He learned to be careful, not to keep the lid completely on the gaiwan, which would suffocate the tea and bring out a bitter astringency. But you couldn't leave it wide open either. The top layer of leaves would cool, creating an uneven temperature and a subtly inconsistent taste. The trick was to crack the lid, resting it at an angle on the lip of the bowl. The biggest sin when preparing tea was scrolling on your phone. It was the surest way to misjudge the timing. Too long, too short. Either way, the tea would turn sharp. But without a phone, the silence could feel a little boring. Leo let his eyes wander around the hall. He was seated directly across from the Japanese delegation setup, giving him a perfect view. He studied the master across the way, the man they called a tea sage. Even if he ever went to Japan, Leo thought he'd never get a chance to have someone like this prepare tea for him. It was like back home. He'd never just casually get to drink tea made by Dr. Sterling. Mr. Mikami was the legendary sage. His expression was serene, unreadable. Every gesture had a sense of meticulous precision, as if the height of his hand with each movement was measured against an invisible line. Their tea space was beautifully arranged. From Leo's perspective, it was a pleasure to watch. Even their slate-gray robes, their chifuku, seemed like a deliberate part of the scenery. The lighting was warm and soft, accentuating every detail perfectly. He couldn't quite see how they were kneeling. Their layered robes were thick and voluminous, obscuring their posture. But in the corner of their space, he spotted Jessica Monroe discreetly shifting her legs. She clearly wasn't used to kneeling, and there were no chairs on their side, only tatami mats. She was tucked away in the corner, trying to cross her legs and use her long hair as a curtain to hide them. He watched her subtly inch backward, trying to find a wall to lean against. A true professional hustler, he thought with a smile, always finding a way to rest. A wisp of steam from his own kettle brought him back. He lifted the pot, letting it cool in his hand for a few seconds before pouring the water in a slow, steady stream, then decanting it quickly. Fourth steeping, fifth, all the way to the ninth. This particular aged white tea was incredibly resilient. It could be steeped over a dozen times and still produce a flavorful, non-bitter infusion. But this was a competition, not a time for frugality. He stopped at 9. 9 was a good number, a concept of returning to 1, representing both imperfection and completion. As the round concluded, a bell chimed, startling Jessica, who had been dozing off, awake. Her legs had gone completely numb. The silence broke. A low murmur, like a tide coming in, washed over the hall. Leo preferred making tea for someone sitting right in front of him. This process, brewing it only to have it whisked away by servers, felt oddly impersonal. It was only because of the tea set Dr. Sterling had lent him that he'd even agreed to this. Next time he'd pass. An event dedicated to the tranquility of tea had somehow managed to make him feel restless. This wasn't for him. He wanted to lean back like Jessica, but the chair was painfully upright. To relax, he'd have to stretch his legs out and slump. Oh, what the hell? He let himself slide down a bit. He caught Sean's eye and flashed a peace sign at the camera. Sean grinned back. The atmosphere had been so serious that even he had been tiptoeing around, terrified of making a sound. Leo felt no pressure. He was just here to fill a spot on the roster. Across the way, Mr. Mikami's face remained a mask of solemnity. He looked like a piece of classic literature, heavy, detail-oriented, with a high barrier to entry and profound thoughts. It seemed a waste to just dump the leaves now that the competition was over. Leo slumped for another moment before sitting up. There were at least 2 more good steepings left in them before the flavor faded completely. He beckoned for Sean to come sit and have a cup. The event was officially breaking up, and Jessica was on her feet. Seeing her trying to slip away along the edge of the room, he called out to her, too. Jessica, come have a cup. She was a classmate, after all. Sean, who'd been on his feet the whole time, sank into the chair, his back instinctively wanting to hunch. Standing for that long was exhausting. Jessica was a little surprised Leo had called her over, but then again, not really. They were from the same school. She was already calculating that after this gig, she could pay him back a good chunk of what she owed him. Jessica, come have a cup. Sean, who'd been on his feet the whole time, sank into the chair, his back instinctively wanting to hunch. Standing for that long was exhausting. Leo poured her a cup. She lifted it and took a sip. It was just as she'd imagined, sweet, fragrant. The cup was tiny. She was an impatient person by nature. This kind of deliberate tea drinking felt like a waste of time, yet she also found herself envying it. Sean was in a similar boat, but he'd seen a bit more of the world now and was no longer a complete stranger to good tea. "Wow, Leo, this is really good," Sean said, surprised. "Way better than the stuff we had before." He'd always thought all tea was basically the same. He never understood the dramatic reactions people had. To him, it was just slightly sweeter than the Lipton bags his family used. But this sip, right here, was different. It was incredibly fragrant and sweet. Leo chuckled. Sean probably liked it so much because the flavor profile, robust and earthy, was historically popular in the rugged, rural parts of the country where he'd grown up. It was a taste of home, even if he didn't realize it. Leo took a thoughtful sip himself. He had tasted every single infusion, noting the subtle differences and adjusting the water temperature and steeping time accordingly. This was the 10th steeping. He'd let it sit a little longer. The flavor from the golden flowers, the beneficial mold, was rich and deep. For a tea that was over a decade old, it still had a powerful energy. Even on the 10th infusion, it was smooth on the throat with a lingering sweet aftertaste. Jessica knew her way around a tea ceremony. She'd worked all the gigs: tea master, incense specialist, floral arranger. She'd grown her hair out for precisely that reason. A long, flowing mane gave her an edge in these artsy jobs. You didn't have to flash a certificate at everyone, she didn't have one, but you had to have the right aesthetic. Long hair, a graceful dress, that plus a little practice, was enough to look the part. Most clients were just dabblers anyway, looking for a way to kill time on the weekend. Her own tea was terrible. The performance was flawless, the posture, the pour, but the result was undrinkable. She figured she just didn't have the touch. She didn't even like it herself. Her gigs weren't in tea shops, which rarely hired part-timers. She worked events. Wealthy clients, usually older women, would organize these Zen retreats at temples or high-end resorts. They'd pay thousands of dollars for a weekend of tea, incense, and flower arranging, which was really just a fancy way to hang out. The environment was safe, the pay was good, the hours were flexible, and the wealthy clientele could lead to other opportunities. She'd taken this translation job because she had the tea experience and spoke Japanese. It was a perfect fit, but she'd never really learned. It had all been for show, good for photos and fooling the bored wives on their Zen retreats. A real expert would see through her in a second. But she was a part-timer, just trying to get by. Time was a luxury she didn't have. She drank the one cup and quietly set it down. She couldn't just sit and chat. After thanking Leo and nodding to Sean, she went back to her post. The results weren't out yet. Mr. Mikami, seeing Jessica return from Leo's table, offered her a cup of his own tea. "Jessica," he asked, "how does my tea compare to your classmates?" She had just tasted Leo's. Now she sipped Mr. Mikami's. "Mr. Mikami," she said carefully, "even if he served me cold water, I would still think it tasted wonderful. So, I'm sorry, but I can't really judge." But he insisted. "Please, I ask you to answer with the meticulous spirit of a true artisan. Do not worry. I can accept an honest opinion." Seeing that he wouldn't let it go, and figuring her paycheck didn't depend on him, she took a breath. "Well, if we put personal feelings aside." She paused, choosing her words. Mr. Mikami took a sip of his own tea. Smooth, fragrant, sweet. He was very pleased with it, ready to receive his compliment. He admired the way she knelt. It was a graceful posture for a woman. Her neck was elegant, her long hair draped over her shoulder, her eyes shining. She looked at him, her expression serious. "Putting personal feelings aside," she repeated, "I still think his tea tastes better than yours, Mr. Mikami. His tea has a soul. Yours lacks one." Mr. Mikami's face tightened. "Baka. Fool." The moment the word escaped his lips, Mr. Mikami, dressed in his formal praying mantis-like tea robe, immediately bowed in apology. He knew Jessica was just an ordinary student from a modest background. His apology was sincere, a formal regret for his momentary loss of composure. Jessica's expression didn't change. A service job was a two-part transaction. You were paid for your labor and for your dignity. A portion of every paycheck was hazard pay for taking crap. She was used to it. When you're dressed in finery, everyone around you is polite. When you're in rags, you're surrounded by monsters. When you walk the low road, darkness is always at your heels. The Japanese word baka was roughly equivalent to the American dumbass. She'd worked with them enough to know they were masters of the apology, especially a condescending one. "I've apologized. What more do you want? The matter is finished. If you don't forgive me, you're the one being unreasonable." That was their logic, especially when someone of high status apologized to someone of lower status. The lower status person never got the chance to apologize for an offense. Jessica didn't give a second thought. But Leo, sipping tea with Sean, had heard it. They had mentioned him. When Jessica spoke Japanese, her voice took on a higher, more delicate pitch, almost like a Japanese girl's. He hadn't been paying close attention at first, but he caught the phrase, putting personal feelings aside, and something about Mr. Mikami's tea having no soul. Then the tea sage had lost his temper, cursed, and immediately apologized. It seemed like a flash of anger, followed by a performance of politeness. Slap you, apologize. Slap you again, apologize again. For some reason, even though Jessica's back was to him, he could picture her perfectly. Head held high, a detached smile on her face, completely unfazed. Her posture was ramrod straight, her long hair falling neatly down her back. She looked like a serene sculpture. Leo took a sip from his cup, the 12th steeping. It was finally starting to taste off, a little bitter. All the good flavor had been extracted, leaving behind a rough, astringent dregs. The dregs of tea were never pleasant. They could even upset your stomach. But this was such good tea, he couldn't bear to dump it. You could always boil the leaves in a pot, a rolling boil that would cook the bitterness right out and yield one last pot, or even use them to make tea-smoked eggs. After the 12th cup, the official results were announced. The entire process had been live-streamed, completely transparent. At the end of the day, no matter how you spun it, tea was judged by how it tasted. Mr. Mikami had just finished his apology when he got slapped in the face by reality. The announcer declared that the best tea of the competition belonged to Jessica's classmate. Out of the 6 contestants, all brewing the same tea, the anonymous tasting panel had consistently favored one. The most cups left on the tray, infusion after infusion, belonged to Leo. Mr. Mikami was a distant second, beating Joy Run by only a single cup. Mr. Yamada and the other artisan were at the bottom of the pack. Joy came over to congratulate Leo. You're incredible. Not only did you win, you blew us all away. I have to try your tea sometime. Leo saw Mr. Mikami's face flush a deep red. Just then, Jessica turned and gave him a smile. This one wasn't restrained. It was broad, genuine, and triumphant. Mr. Mikami couldn't believe it. Leo wasn't even a professional. He hadn't studied formally. It was just a hobby. He was a computer science major. What did that have to do with the art of tea? Those IT guys in their plaid shirts, crammed onto the subway with their backpacks, were fit only for bottled green tea. How could he possibly know how to brew tea? Setting aside any hidden legacy, his movements weren't even professional. They were amateurish. So how? Was it really? Soul? What the hell was a tea's soul? Nanny. Baka. Dr. Sterling, meanwhile, was practically glowing with smug satisfaction, though he put on a show of sincere humility. He approached the Japanese representative. I do apologize, he said, his voice dripping with false modesty. A few of my best students were unavailable, so we had to ask a student from another department to fill in. It was pure luck that his tea turned out so well. Just a fluke, really. The winner's apology. Dr. Sterling knew their culture well. Old Mr. Yamada's face was grim. Mr. Mikami looked utterly lost, but they had watched the judging process. There was no cheating, so that amateur kid really did make better tea? Leo himself was a bit surprised. His tea ceremony skill was only intermediate level 3. He figured everyone here was at least at that level. But he'd had the enhanced palate buff active for the last 2 days, which was perfect for tasting. It had allowed him to adjust his process based on the subtle feedback from his own taste buds, probably pushing his performance to an advanced level. But the real difference maker had to be the tea's hidden side effect. A man skilled in the art of tea is truly charming. Your tea can not only soothe a wealthy woman's fatigue, but also smooth the wrinkles of sorrow in her heart, making her willing to open up to you. If all things were equal, that was the soul of his tea. It made people want to unburden themselves, to let go of their sadness. That was likely why the majority of judges, after tasting everything, had chosen his. In terms of pure flavor, they were probably all pretty close. Faced with this result, Mr. Yamada stepped forward and gave a deep bow. We were unfamiliar with this tea, which may have led to some errors. This was perhaps unfair. Would it be possible for Mr. Mikami and Mr. Foster to compete one more time? This time, using teas they brought themselves. To that end, we are willing to offer another prize, an antique iron teapot from the Meiji era. No translation was needed. Jessica, hearing him speak perfect, unaccented English, was floored. This old man was completely fluent, and he'd had the gall to make her translate his opening remarks. What a master of the game. Mr. Mikami, however, didn't speak English. It was clear they had discussed this plan beforehand. Mr. Mikami also felt it was unfair. Using his own tea, he would surely win. These Americans were always playing tricks, using these strange teas. An error was understandable. But with his own tea, a tea designated for the Emperor of Japan, Summit of Snows, he was confident. An ounce of gold cost about $2,300. An ounce of this tea cost over $3,000. A single serving for a group required 10 grams, costing over $400. And the tea in his possession was of the absolute highest quality, like a vintage bottle from a legendary year. Since they wouldn't be blind, tasting different teas, it was a head-to-head battle. Joy explained the situation to Leo. He'll probably use that tea. It's what made him famous, what cemented his status as a sage. In Japan, that title was exclusive. An industry only had one sage at a time. For a new one to rise, the old one had to die or be disgraced. Mr. Mikami could not accept this failure, especially not to a complete unknown. It was a profound humiliation. Joy whispered, "That iron teapot is a priceless antique, worth more than the golden one they offered before. They must be certain you'll lose. You don't have to do it. You knew. You already won. Let them whine." Just then, a mechanical voice sounded in Leo's mind. Host has diligently completed the tea ceremony task, grasping the true essence of the way of tea. By focusing on brewing a delicious cup of tea without being distracted by competition, the host has maintained his original intention and composure. Reward: intermediate item buff, Zen Mind 1 day. Zen Mind allows one to achieve a state of extreme emptiness and profound stillness during the tea ceremony. It allows one to reach a spiritual state of no self, no dust, no delusion, a fusion with the tea itself. Side effect: Zen Mind is also known as Sage Mode. Use with caution. Leo turned to Joy and Dr. Sterling, his expression one of solemn duty. "I will continue the competition. The prize is not important. This is about our honor. I will not back down." Across the room, Jessica looked at him, her eyes glistening. It must have been from wearing her contacts too long. She felt like she might cry. Dr. Sterling clapped him on the shoulder, deeply moved. "Don't worry, son. Even if you lose, I'll give you a pound of my best dragon's roe tea to make up for it. I've got a direct line on my plantation." Now, a simultaneous brew. Mr. Mikami was certain of victory. First, his tea was 100 times better than the compressed brick tea from the competition. In his view, that was tea for peasants. He had no idea why they'd chosen it. By demanding to use their own tea, they not only created an opening for him to use his legendary Summit of Snows, but also blocked Leo from using anything from Dr. Sterling's collection. They knew exactly what Dr. Sterling had, and even if Leo used it, it wouldn't matter. The tea ceremony may have originated in China, but they had perfected it, elevated it into a true art form. It was more than just taste. It was an aesthetic experience, a way of life, a path to self-cultivation. Their ceremony was supreme. Leo lacked this. Even if his tea was luckily delicious, anyone who witnessed their two methods side by side would understand the beauty of the true way of tea. A famous emperor once wrote, "Tea is a thing of wonder, possessing the finest essence of the mountains and the spirit of the streams. It clears the mind and calms the soul, a truth unknown to the common man. In its quiet simplicity lies a sublime and tranquil elegance." As the modern tea sage, Mr. Mikami had made this his guiding principle. In a face-to-face competition, he was sure he would win. After a short break, he prepared. He didn't go so far as to shower, but he did change into a fresh robe, this one subtly different with the pattern on the second layer of the sleeve instead of the first. He washed his hands and face and lit a stick of incense. Leo's side of the room was also being tidied. He went to the restroom and grabbed some snacks. He was a young guy. Tea made him ravenous. He was munching on some of the refreshments when Joy stopped him just as he reached for a spicy barbecue meatball. "You can't eat that," she said. "The flavor is way too strong. It'll ruin your palate. You can eat after the competition is over." "Okay," Leo sighed. Sean, camera in hand, filmed the whole exchange, his shoulders shaking with silent laughter. The scene was hilarious. He could already see the edit. "My roommate, the sage, a day of tea and temptation." After he finished his snack, Joy made him brush his teeth and wash his hands. "No change of clothes, though. Mikami's movements are choreographed," she advised him. "They look beautiful from every angle. You can't learn that on the fly, so just relax. Stay loose, keep your own rhythm. He can be a butterfly all he wants, but in the end, it's about the taste of the tea." Then she asked him what tea he wanted to use. Since they were bringing out the Emperor's private stash, he could certainly choose from the best of the best. Joy led him to a temperature and humidity-controlled cabinet. "This shelf is all top tier," she said, pulling out a drawer. "That prize-winning dragon's robe is from here. When your professor brews this for his clients, he charges $5,000 a pot. But I wouldn't recommend it. It's too famous, too overpowering. Not everyone loves it. Pick something you genuinely like. Tea is like anything else. When you love it, you get a bonus. Each canister held a different treasure. Leo opened them one by one, inhaling the aroma. It was strange. Maybe he'd smelled too many, but none of them felt as right as the small tin of wild tea Judge Cole had given him. He trusted his senses. He'd tasted enough good tea by now to know. One of the samples was similar to the judge's, but when Leo pinched off a dry leaf and chewed it, he knew his choice was made. There was a subtle difference. When he drank Judge Cole's tea, it felt like stepping into spring. With every footfall, green grass and wildflowers bloomed before him. It was magnificent, exhilarating. He would use that. It wasn't as resilient. It couldn't be steeped as many times, but that didn't matter. The first infusion would make them weep. The break was over. Mr. Mikami was ready. The precious agarwood incense had been lit, its smoke curling silently, calming the atmosphere. The two tea stations were close enough that Leo could smell it. It was a wonderful scent, and it did seem to sharpen his focus. He wondered if lighting a stick during the SATs would add 100 points to your score. Before they began, Leo nodded at Mr. Mikami. Mr. Mikami responded with a formal bow. They presented their teas. As expected, Mr. Mikami revealed his summit of snows. Its appearance was distinctive. The leaves were covered in a fine, white down like fresh snow. A buzz of anticipation went through the judges and connoisseurs in the audience. To be able to taste a legendary tea like that was a rare opportunity. Leo, in contrast, presented an unknown wild tea. The judges had tasted blind in the first round. The Japanese judge, Mr. Wozumi, had been so sure the winner was Mr. Mikami, only to realize he'd been confidently picking Leo's tea every single time. He'd been wrong. This time, he would redeem himself. This time, he wouldn't be mistaken. To be honest, the judges were tired of drinking the same tea over and over. After a while, your palate goes numb, and you start judging by feel. They hadn't expected the winner to be a new student of Dr. Sterling's, someone they'd never even heard of. An actor? A senior in college? An influencer? He was a nobody. But looking at him, he had the air of a kid from a powerful family, slumming it. That kind of quiet confidence often came from having a grandfather who was a senator. How else could you explain him beating a tea sage? They were curious to see what he would use, assuming Dr. Sterling would provide something spectacular. But he really did bring his own, an unknown wild tea. A gift from an elder, Leo explained. It doesn't have a name. It's a wild tea he has custom-made for himself. The canister was plain, no fancy label or expensive packaging. It looked like it had been reused. Mr. Yamada inspected the leaves, then returned to confer with Mr. Mikami. The tea he offers is a spring harvest, naturally withered and fermented. The processing is crude. The arrogant American, he's actually using his own tea. Pride comes before a fall. Mr. Mikami, the honor of the way of tea is in your hands. Mr. Mikami bowed again. The serene notes of a guqin, a Chinese zither, filled the air. The smoke from the incense drifted lazily. The judges and spectators stepped back, giving the two competitors space. As the music began, Leo felt his palms begin to sweat. Across from him, Mr. Mikami had entered his performance mode, his posture immaculate. Leo activated his buff, Zen mind. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. Outwardly, nothing had changed. But suddenly, he seemed to fit into his surroundings more perfectly. No one else noticed, but Sean, looking through his camera lens, saw the man in his viewfinder take on a strange, indefinable, mystical quality. And Jessica, who had been lowering her head to discreetly rest her feet, happened to glance at Leo. In that instant, she felt a jolt. Though he was sitting right there, it was as if he wasn't there at all. He seemed to look at her, a fleeting glance, but his eyes were like the wind brushing past her, through her. A new round began. Leo opened a new taskbar in his mind. Learn the way of tea. The system, after a moment of what felt like digital confusion, approved it. He inhaled the scent of the incense. It smelled expensive, like each puff was worth $100. They were really going all out. The incense was so pure, you could apparently brew it in water and drink it. But just as the water came to a boil, the stick burned out. Joy had explained it to him. The incense was for focus, but it wasn't good to have it burning during the actual brewing, as the aromas would mingle and interfere. So it was just a tiny stick, its scent dissipating as the water heated, as if everyone had inhaled a single, fleeting breath of it. If this were a video game, there might have been a special effect. In the real world, the smoke just vanished. The water was ready. For some reason, Humans were obsessed with pouring boiling water on dried leaves to extract different flavors. Leo didn't know why. He wasn't a scientist. He didn't need to question the fundamentals. He just entered the state of brewing. Even with the crowd, he felt no stage fright. He'd done this on a film set with dozens of people watching. He maintained his sense of relaxed concentration. He was genuinely excited to taste this tea himself. The aged white tea from before had been delicious, rich and complex, the sauce fragrance equivalent in the world of spirits. This wild tea was on the light fragrance end of the spectrum, a completely different experience. He wondered if he could get drunk from mixing teas. He was looking forward to this. The last time he'd had this tea was at Judge Cole's house, and it had felt like a bit of a waste. Such an incredible tea, brewed casually by just pouring boiling water over it, without even monitoring the temperature, refilling the pot whenever it ran low. Even prepared so simply, it was fantastic. If he brewed it with care, savoring the evolution of each steeping, it would be unstoppable. Brewing a tea for the first time was always a special state to be in. It was like a first love. The experience itself was unforgettable. A simple touch of the fingers could be a memory for a lifetime. Mr. Mikami was also filled with anticipation. He had reset his state of mind. He was here to redeem himself. He was the true tea sage. As he opened the canister of Summit of Snows, a delicate, intoxicating aroma filled the air. He was still slightly dissatisfied with the water provided. For a true ceremony, one should use water from the peak of a snow-covered mountain to bring out the tea's full potential. It was like a regional dish that never tasted the same when made elsewhere, even with the exact same ingredients and chefs. It always came down to the water. Mr. Mikami had a mystical faith in his home country's water. Perhaps it had more. Nuclear essence? Both men began to brew. Mr. Mikami had a distinct advantage in appearance. He was handsome, innate, 5 at least, and young, not yet 30 at the peak of his career. His robes were magnificent. On Mr. Yamada, the formal chifuku looked a bit like a costume, but on him it fit perfectly, making him look elegant and distinguished. Every movement was a study in grace, like a dance rehearsed to perfection. Regardless of the tea's taste, watching him was a captivating performance. The audience fell silent, mesmerized by the beautiful, ritualistic display. Seeing all eyes on him, Mr. Mikami became even more focused. Leo, on the other hand, was just making tea like he always did. There was no grand performance. At most, his simple, traditional tea gown gave him a clean, fresh look. At first, only Sean and Jessica noticed the difference. Sean, because his lens was always centered on Leo, could clearly perceive the subtle shift in his presence. And Jessica, though pretending to be working, found her attention involuntarily drawn to him. They were the first to see the change. Sean couldn't put his finger on it, but when Leo was brewing, he seemed utterly at ease, in a state of natural contentment. A feeling of harmonious comfort emanated from him. The third person to feel it was Joyren. Having grown up on a tea plantation, her understanding of tea was as natural as breathing. Her own skill was exceptionally high, and she was on the verge of reaching that state of Zwang, that Zen mind, herself. But she was missing that final step. Dr. Sterling wasn't the purist he used to be, and his teaching style was haphazard. So even though Joy knew what the problem was, she couldn't solve it. But now, watching her junior classmate brew, she suddenly understood what her teacher meant when he said she was missing something. She was too eager. Eager to succeed, eager to perform, eager to prove herself. Her tea lacked a sense of freedom. She remembered being on the plantation, a basket on her back, climbing from the foot of the mountain to the summit, watching the tea plants grow wild and free. At the top, she could see her family's tea fields stretching out below and the distant ocean beyond. Her home was nestled between the mountains and the sea. In that moment, her heart would open, her breathing would ease, and she would feel a sense of boundless freedom, as if she could fly. That was the feeling her tea was missing. And in this moment, just by watching someone else brew tea, she had found it again. Of course, the person in the room who loved tea most of all wasn't Joy, but Dr. Sterling. Otherwise, it never would have become his life's work. He was a smart man from a good family who had fallen on hard times. At his lowest point, he went to visit an elder, hoping to ask for help. He never even got to see the man. He was left to wait, and all he was given was a single cup of tea. He drank it from hot to cold, but the person he came to see never appeared. The tea was good, though. He sipped it slowly, trying to make it last. He was in someone else's house, worried about needing the restroom if he drank too much, but feeling awkward without something to hold. The cup of tea was a shield. No one paid him any mind. He waited for a long time. Finally, an assistant came out and told him the man he was waiting for was suddenly busy and he should come back another day. He set the cup down, but then, after a moment's thought, he picked it back up. It was a waste to leave it. It was good tea, even cold. He drained the cup and left. From that day on, he fell in love with tea. He became obsessed with tasting, studying, and feeling the difference between hot and cold infusions. And, without even realizing it, he became Dr. Arthur Sterling, the renowned tea expert. The most memorable cup of tea in his life was that cold one, served by a host he never met. It was a little bitter, a little astringent, but that was life. And tea was life. And now, watching the young man in front of him, he was inexplicably reminded of that cold cup. Just watching him rinse the cups, brew the leaves, so cleanly, so simply, he saw a kind of poetry, a tranquility, a memory. He was transported back to that small waiting room, nervously sipping tea. If he could go back, he thought, he would have paid more attention. That tea was truly excellent, sweet, and delicious. But back then, all he could remember was the bitterness and astringency of it growing cold. Unconsciously, the attention of the entire room had shifted. The Japanese judge, Mr. Wozumi, had come to America to study, but his heart had always remained in his homeland. He had told himself to be firm, to choose Mr. Mikami. Mr. Mikami was their national pride. And today, thanks to him, he would have the honor of tasting the emperor's favorite summit of snows. It was worth the trip. He watched Mr. Mikami's performance with pride. That was the true way of tea. He cast a dismissive glance at the man next to him. Yes, he had a strong sense of critical judgment. He only acknowledged their tea ceremony as the one true path. All others were imitations. So he only gave the others a careless glance. But one careless glance became another, and then another. There were two men in front of him. One was performing. The other was living. He was brewing tea for himself, with a relaxed, joyful anticipation. The water boiled, steam rising, then fell in a gentle stream. The leaves danced, releasing their essence. The liquor was a vibrant green. A faint, fresh aroma drifted through the air, forgetting the self, no self, true self. In that instant, the Japanese judge suddenly understood what the true way of tea was. The tea was ready. It was time to drink. Leo, the brewer, looked up and smiled faintly. Without any ceremony, he lifted his own cup first and took a gentle sip. The snow on the mountain melted, the grass grew green, and the flowers bloomed. Mr. Wozumi, the winter plums back home are in bloom. Tears streamed down his face. Mr. Mikami was intensely focused on his brewing, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The room was too quiet, the audience too still. Had they been so captivated by his performance? The thought spurred him to be even more meticulous. Summit of Snows was a powerful tea. One had to master the water temperature and timing perfectly. The leaves were soft on the surface, but resilient underneath. They could survive on a snow-covered mountain, yet they were so fragile that a single touch could break the delicate downy hairs. Brewing it required immense care. The leaves were so precious they were harvested with tweezers, plucked one by one. The tea pickers often suffered from frostbite, but their hands were forbidden from ever touching the leaves. It was a miraculous tea, with a miraculous flavor. He finished brewing. The aroma was intense. Even Jessica, kneeling a short distance away, could smell its rich fragrance. But her eyes were on Leo. He was brewing quietly, comfortably, calmly. Yet, for some reason, Jessica felt a sudden panic. He was too calm. It was as if she could see him, but at the same time, he had vanished, ceased to exist. The man brewing tea in front of her seemed like a stranger, a monk who had achieved perfect stillness, who rang a temple bell 800 times a day while chanting sutras. She didn't understand. She knelt there, her legs pressed together, but her consciousness seemed to leave her body. It floated away from her, behind Leo. She watched him brew, his movements unhurried. She reached out and wrapped her arms around him from behind, her long hair falling over his shoulder. He remained unmoved, utterly absorbed in his task. Jessica felt like a ghost, a spirit clinging to his back, her body pressed against his, yet he was completely unaware. She was desperate to get his attention, to break his concentration. Then he spoke. "It's ready. We can drink." He lifted his cup, took a small sip, and a smile touched his lips. Everything shattered. The spirit flew back in her body, and Jessica was hit with the searing pain of pins and needles in her legs. She jumped, startled by her own mind. What was wrong with me? She was watching a man make tea and had imagined herself walking up behind him, hugging him, her hands covering his as they brewed together, her body pressed against his back, feeling his warmth. She had become some kind of seductress, and he, an untouchable monk. She had been afraid he would disappear. Then she felt a sudden warmth spread between her legs. Oh no, not again. Her period was notoriously unreliable. Her lower back had been aching all day. She thought it was just from kneeling. Now, she could only be grateful that her pants were a dark, thick navy blue. The tea was ready. The judges and connoisseurs each received 2 cups. Since the teas were different, there was no blind tasting. Out of reverence for its reputation, Summit of Snows was, after all, the official tribute tea of the Japanese emperor, something money couldn't buy. Most people reached for Mr. Mikami's cup first. Mr. Wozumi, the Japanese judge, did the same. He didn't understand why he had wept earlier. He sipped Mr. Mikami's tea. This was, in his mind, the pinnacle of tea, the perfect embodiment of what a great tea should be. Gentle, sweet, soft, leaving a pleasant moisture in the mouth. It was as beautiful as a young maiden's body. Then he rinsed his mouth with water and prepared to taste Leo's. Almost all the judges followed this pattern. After drinking Summit of Snows, their faces were filled with praise. It was a flawless tea. Only a few chose to taste Leo's first. Mr. Wozumi was certain Summit of Snows was the best. Drinking it only confirmed his belief. The tears he'd shed while watching Leo brew were just a moment of weakness, a wave of homesickness in a foreign land. He had to drink Leo's tea as well. He was a judge. It was his duty, even if his mind was already made up. Summit of Snows was the winner. Mr. Mikami was the rightful sage. He picked up the second cup. Its aroma was not as intense. He drank it with the perfunctory air of a hiring manager interviewing candidates for a position that had already been filled by the boss's nephew. It was just a formality. He didn't savor it, didn't roll it over his tongue. He just took a sip like drinking water and swallowed. This competition can end now, he thought as he set the cup down. And then he smelled it. The scent of winter plums from his hometown, a fragrance almost like wine. His childhood home was small, but every day on his way out, he would pass a plum tree at the corner. In winter, it would bloom, its fragrance filling the air. It was a scent that haunted his dreams, but that he had never encountered again in reality. The street was eventually redeveloped, and the tree was gone. Just like his mother, who used to wait for him after school, was gone, lost to illness. No one waited for him to come home anymore. The tea went down, and he saw his mother, her smile so beautiful, holding his hand under the plum tree as he looked up at the blossoms. The tea was wonderful, but he had drunk it too quickly. The image of his mother holding his hand was just a flash, gone the moment he set the cup down. Why did this tea hold his memories? Tears streamed down Mr. Wozumi's face again. Dr. Sterling drank his slowly. He was back in that waiting room, carefully holding the cup, sipping the tea that grew colder with each passing minute. His heart had been so full of anxiety back then that he had only registered the tea's bitterness. But he had been wrong. It wasn't bitter at all. It was sweet, so very sweet. Just like this. After everyone had tasted, a deep silence fell over the room. Mr. Mikami was bewildered. Why was everyone so quiet? Even his own countrymen on the panel were silent. Something strange had happened, but he didn't know what. Even Mr. Yamada was speechless. Finally, he couldn't bear it any longer. He turned to Leo. Mr. Foster, may I have a cup of your tea? Leo nodded. It was time for the second steeping. He waited for the water to boil, then poured it slowly, decanted the liquor, and served the tea. As the liquid swirled in the cup, Mr. Mikami watched him, his hand trembling slightly as he accepted it. He drank it very, very slowly. He thought of his childhood, when he was very, very small. His grandfather had told him he would be the heir to their family, that he must learn to appreciate tea, to become an exemplary tea master. He had to protect his palate, his sense of smell. He was never allowed to eat the snacks from the street stalls, the food with heavy flavors. No KFC, no McDonald's. Once, overcome with curiosity, he had snuck out with his friends and eaten a piece of KFC fried chicken. His grandfather had struck his palms with a ruler. It hurt so much, and his punishment was to fast for 3 days. But on the second night, his mother had come to him secretly. She brought him a bowl of akazuke, tea over rice. He was starving. It was the most delicious thing he had ever eaten. The broth, the tea, was the most wonderful soup he had ever tasted. He later learned it was an illusion. The tea his mother had used was just the ordinary dregs from the kitchen, not a fine tea at all. But it tasted so good. Even after becoming a tea sage, he had never tasted a tea as wonderful as the one in his mother's akazuke. She could never replicate it. But in this moment, he had tasted it again. Mr. Mikami set the cup down, his hand shaking. Mr. Foster, he asked, his voice strained. What is this tea? Leo replied, just some ordinary wild tea. That night, his mother had said the same thing. He had asked, Mother, what is this tea? And she had smiled and said, Mikami, it's just some ordinary wild tea. Yep, it was her period. She'd recognized the feeling instantly. Thankfully, Jessica was always prepared. Her bag was a survival kit. Bug spray, pads, mouthwash, a small makeup arsenal, wet wipes, dry tissues, medicated oil. She ducked into the restroom and took care of it. It felt like she was getting it twice a month now. Her cycle was a mess, but what could she do? Growing up without a mother and with an unreliable father didn't exactly set you up for perfect health. With a fresh pad in place, she felt a little more secure, though her lower back still ached. She'd seen news reports about contaminated feminine products, but most of the time, she couldn't afford to be picky. You use what you could get. When she came back out, washing her hands and slipping back into her post, the Japanese delegation was in such an agitated state that no one noticed she'd been gone. In a competition, if the margin of victory is small, the loser can always find excuses. External factors, a bit of bad luck, the opponent wasn't that much better. But when the gap is a chasm, those excuses evaporate. Mr. Mikami, the proud loser, had personally tasted Leo's tea. In that moment, he understood why Jessica had said his tea lacked a soul. That simple, unpretentious wild tea had transported him back to a bowl of tea rice on a long-forgotten night. Mr. Yamato was equally stunned. He, too, had tasted Leo's tea after the first round, wanting to understand where they had failed. He had acknowledged, then, that Leo's brew was smoother, more pleasant. But this time was different. He tasted Leo's second tea and was silenced. It was incredible. The only explanation was that the young man had been holding back during the first, more serious competition. Had he just been messing around before? Did he only get serious for this one-on-one duel with Mr. Mikami? It was the only way to explain the massive leap in quality. A casual drinker might not notice, but for Mr. Yamada, a man steeped in the way of tea for decades, the difference was profound. This tea had utterly vanquished Summit of Snows. Mr. Mikami's tea offered a sense of perfection, of completion. But Leo's wild tea offered a taste of imperfection, of loss. Perfection is an illusion. Imperfection is truth. Mr. Yamada's expression was grave. His antique Meiji-era iron teapot, which he had brought along mainly to show off, was lost. A conspiracy theory began to form in his mind. Perhaps this was a ruse. Americans were known for their cunning. He had only shown a fraction of his skill in the first round to lull them into a false sense of security. Because during that first brew, Mr. Yamada had observed his opponent and saw a man making tea. This time, he saw a man who had entered the Tao. It was a mystical feeling, one that an outsider could never understand. He had felt it only once before, from his own master, a moment when the man seemed to merge with nature itself. The tea that day had been extraordinary. It was why so many practitioners sought out dramatic locations. Mountain peaks, cliff edges, waterfalls to brew their tea. They were searching for that state of oneness with nature, that spiritual realm of no self, no dust. A tea brewed in that state truly did taste better. Listening to the crashing waves, your tea takes on the flavor of the sea breeze, the power of the tide, a taste of life itself. His own master had chased that state until the day he died. It was like the people who climbed Everest or went skydiving every weekend. They were chasing the meaning of life, chasing self-transcendence. And in this moment, Mr. Yamada had encountered it. He had met a man who had achieved that state of extreme emptiness and profound stillness. He had brought their tea sage here to legitimize their art, to prove that they were the true inheritors and innovators of the way of tea. All others were fakes, pale imitations. But reality had delivered a brutal slap to the face. Mr. Mikami had lost. Even the Japanese judge couldn't, in good conscience, say Mr. Mikami's tea was better. One tea tasted good. The other tasted of his childhood, of winter plums, of sorrow, of lost love. They were not in the same league. It was a landslide. After drinking Leo's tea, Mr. Mikami himself was silent for a long time before conceding with swift, decisive grace. No wonder they used tatama mats. It made it very convenient to admit defeat. He leaned forward, prostrating himself in a deep bow. I have lost. Mr. Foster, your way of tea is far superior to mine. But I will not give up. I will continue to strive, and one day, I will seek you out again. He delivered his surrender with the earnest finality of a cartoon villain vowing his return. Leo. And just like that, he'd won. He thought there might be another round, some challenge to identify the vintage of different teas. He was all prepared. He didn't need a translation for the surrender. And during their brief exchange, Jessica had realized Leo spoke some Japanese. It wasn't that surprising. Bridgeport had a lot of joint Japanese-American ventures, and the university offered plenty of language courses. Leo was still deeply uncomfortable with the bowing. The only time he ever bowed was at a grave. Being bowed to like this made him feel like he was the one in the casket. He subtly shifted to the side. "Mr. Foster, may I follow you and learn from you?" Now Leo understood the internet jokes about Japan's bowing artisan spirit. When someone bowed to you like that, asking to learn, it was almost impossible to refuse. It was like a special move in a video game that automatically lowered your defenses and increased their chance of success by 50%. When Americans asked for a favor, they stood up straight, afraid of looking weak. These guys bent over at a moment's notice. The day they surpassed you, they'd be the ones on the high platform, looking down at the tops of everyone else's heads. Leo explained that he was only here for 2 days. He had to get back to campus for classes. He was a senior. "Mr. Mikami, everyone else." A collective spit take. Mr. Mikami said that even 2 days of learning would be an honor. Leo was panicking internally. He was a fraud, a system user. What would he possibly teach? His fundamentals were a mess. He was the one who needed training. The Japanese representative's bow grew even deeper. Leo actually wanted to try Mr. Mikami's tea. The Emperor's personal blend couldn't be that bad. When the judges had tasted it, their expressions had been blissful. "Mr. Mikami, I should be learning from you," Leo said earnestly. "Your posture, your technique, it's all so professional. And your tea smells incredible." He was shamelessly angling for a taste. This was the Emperor's tea, after all. He had a nagging suspicion. Maybe his own tea had tasted so good because everyone had drunk Mr. Mikami's first. The lingering aftertaste of that tea might have been so long and complex that it was still developing on their palates when they drank his, enhancing its flavor. It was like eating a rich, decadent dish like shark fin soup, then having a simple plate of greens and declaring the greens were better. Were they really? But Mr. Mikami didn't think so. He had tasted Leo's tea. He knew the difference. He felt ashamed of his own arrogance. He bowed again. "Mr. Foster, thank you for your kind words about my tea. Please, accept this token of my respect." Leo watched as he reached under the table and brought out an ancient-looking canister, sliding it across to him. The characters on it were clear, Summit of Snows. At the same time, the system's voice echoed in his head. "Congratulations, host, for making progress in conquering the gold tier single male. Mikami Dekusho, age 29, net worth, 495,208,800 yen, academic ability, 79 appearance, 85. Favorable impression has reached 70. His admiration for you is second only to his own master. Please continue your efforts and strive for new heights." Leo stared at the long string of numbers. That was over $3 million. And his appearance was an 85? This handsome, wealthy guy was single? At 29, he was practically an old man. Something had to be wrong with him. Leo couldn't help but ask Mr. Mikami, "You don't have a girlfriend, do you?" Mikami looked shocked, then a little ashamed. Was it that obvious? Was his tea lacking because he was lacking? He had always been celibate, dedicating himself to the way of tea. He'd lived like a monk. Even eating KFC as a child was a punishable offense. He believed women would interfere with his practice. He couldn't stop himself from asking, "Does being single affect one's tea? I have dedicated my life to this art since I was a child. Was I wrong?" Leo pulled the canister of Summit of Snows closer. "Mr. Mikami, you should first learn to be a happy person. Only then can you brew happy tea. You can't just rely on your hand forever, man." It was dark. After an entire afternoon of drinking tea, Leo was starving. Thankfully, it was finally time for dinner. Being a college student meant crashing events for the food. He'd heard tonight's dinner was supposed to be a lavish affair. Lunch had been a simple boxed meal for the staff. The evening banquet was reserved for the VIPs and the working crew. Leo asked Sean to take the canister of Summit of Snows back to their room. He then joined Dr. Sterling, Joy, and Mr. Mikami's group heading to the restaurant. The award ceremony had been postponed until the morning, so the antique Meiji teapot, the small golden pot, and the prize-winning dragon's robe tea would have to wait. An iron kettle to boil the water, a golden pot to brew the tea, and dragon's robe leaves to brew in it. Add that to the cups Dr. Sterling had given him, and he had the complete set. Along the way, Mr. Mikami was still lost in thought. Leo's final words. First learn to be a happy person. Had struck a chord, but he couldn't quite grasp its meaning. He walked in silence. Mr. Yamato was also silent, but for a different reason. He was heartbroken over the Meiji-era iron teapot. It was a genuine antique, not a replica. He'd shown it off countless times, even brought it overseas just to flex. The plum blossom carvings on it were exquisite, lifelike, and now it was gone. He couldn't blame Mr. Mikami. They had made the decision to challenge Leo together. He just never imagined they would lose. His eyes hadn't welled up when he drank Leo's tea, but they were red now. The more he thought about it, the redder they got. Oh, Amaterasu. He was supposed to be giving a victory speech at a winner's banquet. He had even memorized the humble remarks. Now he was just part of the background noise. His heart was bleeding with grief. Dr. Sterling, however, gave him no quarter. He didn't treat him like a loser or even like a person. He cheerfully engaged him in conversation about the exquisite craftsmanship of the Meiji teapot, praising its beauty and asking about its history. Leo had intended to go straight to dinner after Sean dropped off the tea, but Sean, needing to drop off his camera and charge his batteries, sent him a text. Sean Riley, I'm going to skip dinner and edit. It'll take too long, and I get awkward around all those important people. Leo understood. These formal dinners were stiff. But with Mr. Mikami sticking to him like glue, and with all the prizes he'd just won, skipping wasn't an option. He texted Sean back, telling him to grab something to eat. Sean Riley, they've got a staff buffet. I'll just take a plate back to the room. Don't worry about me. Leo Foster, okay. Besides, it was bad form to film during a dinner like this. The big shots didn't like being on camera while they ate. Since Mr. Mikami didn't speak English, Jessica had to tag along as a translator. Normally, her job would be done by now. She was a savvy part-timer, dinner was after hours, and she wasn't obligated to stay. Plus, as a young woman at these kinds of events, especially if alcohol was involved, things could get sketchy. She never touched the stuff. But tonight, Leo was there. She stayed. If it were just the two of them, having dinner would be impossibly awkward. But in a large group like this, it was fine. She could satisfy some secret wish without feeling like she was crossing a line. They arrived at the restaurant's massive, ornate private dining room. Contestants and judges mingled. A shared meal was a social foundation. After eating together, you were acquaintances. You could add each other on social media. You were practically friends. Leo noticed that all these grand dining rooms had one thing in common: incredibly high ceilings. It created a comfortable sense of space. Add a glittering crystal chandelier, and the opulence was complete. During the seating arrangement, Dr. Sterling and Mr. Yamada politely fought over who would take the head of the table. Finally, Dr. Sterling sat with Mr. Yamada beside him, a sort of dual host setup. The Japanese delegation, it seemed, had a very Midwestern obsession with seating charts. Dr. Sterling had Leo sit next to him. Mr. Mikami was supposed to sit by Mr. Yamada, but he wanted to sit with Leo, which meant Jessica ended up sitting near Leo, with only Mr. Mikami between them. Once they were seated, servers began bringing out tea and the first courses. Seeing the teacups, no one made a move. They'd had enough for one day. Dr. Sterling thoughtfully asked Leo what he'd like to drink. Leo requested a cup of hot soy milk. The tea had left his stomach feeling empty and raw. Something warm and gentle sounded perfect. There was wine on the table, but Dr. Sterling ordering a non-alcoholic drink for him was a clear signal. Leo was Professor Reed's student. If he let him get drunk, his old colleague would have his head. And as a university official, he couldn't be so irresponsible. Leo was supposed to be at the kids' table. But since he'd unexpectedly won, he'd been promoted to the main event. The banquet was magnificent. Americans could be overly hospitable. It was a deep-seated habit. You might eat ramen at home, but when guests came, you brought out the best. Especially for foreign guests. Leo was starving. He opened a new taskbar, complete dinner. A notification pinged in his mind. Host has completed the task. Learn the way of tea. The host brewed with sincerity and focus, experiencing the essence of Zen mind and sharing a delicious cup of tea that brought satisfaction to others. Reward. Growth plus 0. 1 can be applied to any part of the body. Leo Foster, now 174, 8 centimeters, of course, chose to add it to his height. He wondered if the growth was proportional or if he could target specific areas. Walking over here with Mr. Mikami, he fell short. The man was wearing traditional wooden sandals, geta, with thick soles. All his hard-earned growth was negated by a pair of shoes. But no matter, Leo was confident. Could he reach 180 centimeters by the end of the story? One day, he'd be a 6-foot-tall, handsome man. A server brought a small pitcher of hot soy milk. Leo poured himself a glass and then offered some to Jessica. He'd overheard her telling Joy that she was on her period. He poured a glass for her. Jessica knew nothing bad would happen at a dinner like this. She cupped her cold hands around the warm glass and took a small sip. She liked it sweet, with lots of sugar. It had a warm, nutty fragrance. She drank it with intense focus. Mr. Mikami watched Leo on his right and Jessica on his left, both drinking soy milk. He thought perhaps he should have a glass as well. Treating the banquet like a quest made it much easier. Otherwise, you'd see a beautiful slice of beef tenderloin in front of you, but you'd be too afraid to take it, worried someone would ask you a question mid-chew. But not eating was just as awkward. You were stuck. By reframing it as a task, daily quest, attend banquet, the anxiety vanished. Just like with studying or reading, when it was time to eat, you just ate. Leo sat next to Dr. Sterling, near the head of the table. This position had a distinct advantage. When he was serving himself, not only would people pause the lazy Susan for him, they'd hold it steady until he was finished. He focused on his food, diligently trying every dish that came his way. He was genuinely hungry after the tea, and as a guy in his early 20s, he could pack it away. When a particularly good dish came back around, he took a larger portion. His enhanced palate buff was still active. He learned a thing or two from being Professor Reed's assistant. While taking more for himself, he also used the serving utensils to place a choice piece on Dr. Sterling's plate. The head of the table wasn't an easy seat. The host rarely got to eat their fill. You couldn't just bury your head in your plate when people were constantly talking to you. Dr. Sterling was fielding conversations from around the table, politely taking a small bite when urged. He was in the middle of a story when he noticed his plate was mysteriously accumulating food. He took a bite of something. It was delicious. For the rest of the meal, he found himself being subtly, naturally fed. He glanced at the young man beside him, who was still eating with serious concentration. The server had already replaced his small plate twice. Every time Leo found something he liked, he'd share some. This kid is really something, Dr. Sterling thought. He'd won first place in a major competition, yet he was humble and quiet, letting the old guys do all the talking. In his long career, Dr. Sterling had met many brilliant people, but it was rare to find a young person who could remain so grounded in a moment of triumph. Even he, an old man, had trouble staying humble. Leo was only 21. He had every right to be arrogant, to boast, to look down on his competitors. It was the privilege of youth. But he wasn't. He was just enjoying his meal and sharing it with others. He sat next to his rival, Mr. Mikami, and was perfectly cordial, even recommending dishes. If Dr. Sterling had a favorable impression meter, it would have been shooting through the roof. Leo didn't put food on Mr. Mikami's plate, unsure of the customs, but he would point out dishes he thought were especially good. Mr. Mikami was still in a bit of daze. Leo's words had shaken his long-held beliefs. He had always thought his disciplined, ascetic life was the true path. His entire life was scheduled, down to the hour for years in advance. This competition, this very dinner, had been on his calendar since last year. The only thing he hadn't planned for was losing to a young man who would tell him, "First learn to be a happy person, then you can brew happy tea." He didn't think he was unhappy. He was well off, the legitimate heir to a prestigious tea school, with access to the best resources. He didn't play video games, go to bars, or eat junk food. He was the picture of discipline. But now he realized something was missing. If he himself was incomplete, how could he brew a tea with a soul? He felt he was on the verge of a breakthrough, so he started observing Leo. He saw Leo pour Jessica a glass of hot soy milk, but that was it. There was no flirtation. Their interactions were restrained. He watched Leo eat with pure, unadulterated enjoyment, while he himself was lost in thought. He felt a pang of self-reproach. He had lost one competition and had let it shatter his composure. Leo had won, yet he acted as if it were just another day. This young man was someone worth learning from. By the end of the meal, Leo had exchanged contact info with several of the bigwigs and swapped phone numbers with Mr. Mikami. The Japanese delegation didn't use standard messaging apps. They were paranoid about American tech stealing their data and preferred to use Line. But surprisingly, Mr. Mikami had TikTok on his phone. His handle was simply the Tea Sage, but he only had about 200 followers. People probably assumed it was a joke like the Drywall Saint. He was shocked to see that Leo's account, The Roommate Chronicles, had over 680,000 followers. He followed Leo immediately. "I did not realize one could become a sage simply by being a roommate," Mr. Mikami said with genuine admiration. "You must be a very good roommate, Mr. Foster." Leo Dude, it's just a screen name, not a job title. After dinner, the party broke up. It seemed Dr. Sterling and Mr. Yamada were heading out for a second round, a common ritual for their generation. But Dr. Sterling treated Leo like a student and wouldn't dream of taking him along. He sent the younger ones off to get some rest. Jessica was exhausted. All she wanted was to wrap a tight bandage around her lower back to ease the aching. Mr. Mikami, with his rigid self-discipline, was also excused from the after-party and retired to his room. The long day was finally over. Jessica was officially off the clock. Her back and legs throbbed as she walked slowly back toward the hotel wing they were staying in. The full meal had helped, giving her a bit more strength. Leo was also walking slowly, but because he'd eaten too much. The food had been exceptional, a real showcase of culinary skill. That, combined with his earlier hunger, had led him to overindulge. He and Jessica walked together in comfortable silence. The path was lined with old trees strung with fairy lights, a blend of vintage and modern. The night wind was cold and sharp. The walk was short, but their slow pace made it feel longer. Just the two of them, the wind and the stars above and below. Stepping into the hotel lobby, the sudden blast of warm air and the bustle of people shattered the quiet mood. They reached the third floor, and Jessica stopped at her door. The hallway was long and dimly lit, adorned with quiet ink-wash paintings. She didn't go in right away. She turned, faced him, and gave a small, formal bow. Arigato, Foster-san. Oyasumane-sai. Thank you, Leo. Good night. Leo. Why was she suddenly speaking Japanese? It had zero effect on him. The buff side effect was in full swing. The woman in front of him had a slender waist, full hips, and long, dark hair falling over a pale, elegant neck, but he felt nothing. Sage mode was a curse. Good night, he said, and practically sprinted down the hall to his own room. Back in the room, Leo knocked before swiping his keycard. They got in too. Inside, the scene was just like their dorm. Sean sat hunched over his laptop, deep in concentration. Leo threw himself onto the king-size bed and spread-eagled. You couldn't do that in a dorm bunk. The hotel bed was too soft, though. On his hard mattress back at school, a good flop would make his spine pop in the most satisfying way. He could feel the side effect taking hold. He'd experienced it once before, so he recognized the sensation. A moment ago, Jessica's posture, the bow, the soft thanks, had triggered something. It felt like the opening scene of a certain kind of video he might have seen online. Blood rushed to his head, then diverted somewhere else. And then, nothing. It was a terrifying feeling of sudden and complete neutrality. He had fled back to his room with the image of her burned into his mind. It was strange. When she'd jumped in front of him in a swimsuit all that time ago, he hadn't felt a thing. Now, she was fully clothed, and his mind was running wild. Was this the side effect? Or was it just making him feel like it was? He lay there for a while until his mind and body returned to normal, then sat up. Did you eat? He asked Sean. Yeah. Hit the hotel buffet. It was pretty good. They had lobster. Huge claws, Sean said. I walked by her private room. Looked bright and stuffy, everyone sitting in their assigned seats. So glad I skipped it. You guys were in there forever. It's been almost 2 hours. Leo checked his watch. It had been nearly 2 hours. The meal had dragged on, mostly because of all the ritualistic toasting. Luckily, Dr. Sterling had ordered him a soda at the start, so he'd been exempt, but he'd gotten a front row seat to the performance. The dinner started out quiet and formal, a real high-stakes game of etiquette. But after a few rounds of drinks, the atmosphere loosened considerably. One of the judges, a few glasses in, started telling a story about a team mistress who brewed in a traditional Chong Sam, completely commando. Leo leaned in, intrigued. For real? Then what happened? But Joy had cut the story short. Another executive from some bureau got equally loose-lipped. It seemed that once the alcohol flowed, adult dinner parties inevitably steered toward risque topics as a form of social bonding. Too bad they never got to the good parts. Sean had made the right call. You're back just in time, Sean said. Take a look at this edit. If it's good, I'll post it. He wanted to post the video of Leo's painting yesterday, but Leo had asked him to hold off. Dr. Croft was planning an exhibition, and he didn't want to spoil it. So the video sat in their content library, waiting. Sean had posted a single photo to his personal feed, though, a shot Leo took of him filming the painting. The canvas itself was blacked out, but the picture of Sean, his posture straighter than usual, tall and lean holding the camera, had gotten a ton of likes. It was a surprisingly cool picture. Sean had quietly made it his new profile picture. But today's tea competition was fair game. If he didn't post it, Dr. Sterling's university would be putting out their own press releases anyway. Leo sat up. One of the best things about staying in a hotel was the TV. He found the remote and flipped through the channels. Nothing much was on. He settled on the local news. He hadn't watched broadcast TV in so long that even the commercials were kind of interesting. Sean put on his headphones and went back to work. After a few minutes of news, Leo decided to take a hot shower, another luxury compared to the dorms. Thankfully, this room didn't have one of those weird glass-wall bathrooms. He locked the sliding door, set his phone on a shelf in the shower, and watched the videos Sean had sent him. Sean had cut 2 versions. The first was a standard TikTok edit, quick cuts, text overlays, explaining the context of the competition. It was fine. The second version was different. It was just footage from the second competition, long, clean shots with no frills. It showed him brewing the wild tea, the judges' reactions, and the final exchange with Mr. Mikami. The first video was fun, but the second one had an impact. Watching it gave him a feeling of satisfaction, a vicarious thrill. The version of himself on screen really did have a kind of ethereal, otherworldly quality. No wonder the side effect was what it was. It was a cosmic joke. He emerged from the shower, wrapped in a thick towel. The hotel body wash had a strange, earthy herbal scent, but it was refreshing. He put on his sleep clothes, an old t-shirt and shorts, and came out. Sean, I think the second version is way better. Sean nodded. Me too. I'll post that one. He stood up and stretched. Suddenly, he pointed at the TV. Leo, look. I think you're on TV. Huh. Leo turned. The local evening news was on. The anchor, in a crisp, professional voice, was reporting on the International Tea Ceremony Seminar. Our own outstanding tea ceremony competitor, Leo Foster, defeated the Japanese representative, Mikami Dekusho, to win the grand prize. The screen showed footage of him brewing tea. It was only 3 or 4 seconds, but it was there. They even showed a 1-second shot of the prizes. In the heyday of television, a 4-second ad in a primetime slot like this would have cost millions. While many people stream their shows now, the evening news still had a dedicated audience. People like Judge Cole, like Richard Vance, like Professor Reed, and like his own father. Ray Foster had started watching the Bridgeport local news and weather ever since his son had gone to college there. When you have someone you care about in a city, even its minor events become important. He never expected to see his own son. Tammy, get in here. Stop putting that stuff on your face. Come on, it's our son. He's on TV. Ray's voice boomed through the house like it used on the factory floor. No way. The show he was an extra in is out already? That was fast, Tammy Foster said, patting toner onto her face as she shuffled over to the TV. But it was too late. I told you to hurry. It was him on the news. Something about a tea competition. Oh wait, I saw it. There was another quick shot. It looked like our Leo. He looks so much better on TV. Did they put makeup on you for the news? Tammy said, getting excited. Did you record it? Aw, no. I was too busy yelling for you. Tammy jabbed her husband in the ribs with her elbow. Her hands were covered in expensive skincare products her son had sent her. She couldn't waste them by actually hitting him. Ray slapped himself on the forehead a few times. What an idiot. He was thrilled. It was a good thing he closed up his food stall early tonight. No one was buying much on a cold winter evening anyway. Should we call him? Tammy asked. Yeah, let's call him. Ray opened his messenger app and hit the video call button. Leo picked up. The background wasn't his dorm room. Hey, Dad. Yeah, I'm out of town for that tea event. They put us up in a hotel. Where's Mom? Tammy's head, wrapped in a towel, her face shiny with moisturizer, popped into the frame. Leo smiled. Mom was in the middle of her skincare ritual. Leo, are you in a hotel? Are you alone? No, I'm with my roommate, Sean. He's here filming for our TikTok. Hearing his name, Sean got up and waved at the camera. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Foster. Seeing a familiar face, Tammy and Ray both relaxed. Hello, Sean. Thank you for taking care of him, Tammy said. Their son was in his 20s, but they still saw him as a kid. They chatted for a few more minutes before hanging up. As soon as the call ended, Tammy started nagging her husband again for not asking how their son ended up on the news in the first place. Their calls always followed the same script. How are you? Where are you? Are you eating well? How are your classes? It's cold, wear a coat. With the checklist complete, the call would end. Just as they were talking, a message popped up in the Foster family group chat. It was from Leo's aunt. She had posted a clip of the news segment. Aunt Sky at Ray at Tammy, did you guys see this? Leo's on TV. The chat instantly exploded. Leo had hung up on his parents quickly because Stella was calling. In the early stages of a relationship, no call was more important than your girlfriend's. He knew Stella was at home, and while he was in a hotel, Sean's presence made it feel more like his dorm. Still, he was a little shy about getting too mushy on a video call. I was just watching the news, she said, her voice full of surprise. I think I saw you. She had assumed he was just running an errand, like when he'd been Professor Reed's assistant. He told her he was helping out a friend of the professor's, repaying a favor for borrowing a tea set for his movie role. Stella knew he was good at making tea. Even her hypercritical mother had said it was quite good, which was the highest praise imaginable. But she never thought he was this good. Good enough to just casually win a competition that made the local news? Richard Vance was spending the evening with his wife, Victoria, so the TV was tuned to a cycle of news channels. He always said that while the government never lied, you had to know how to listen for the truth. Stella was lounging with them in the den, a cozy, lived-in space that her mother, despite her impeccable taste, had preserved. It felt like a retreat to her own childhood. Stella was scrolling through her phone, half watching her parents be cute and half watching the TV. That's when she saw him. Actually, she saw a familiar figure in the corner of the shot first. It looked like her classmate, Jessica Monroe. Then she saw Leo. Victoria noticed him first. After spending $500,000 on a portrait of someone, you tend to remember their face. And Victoria was a tea lover herself. She'd once bought a tea house on a whim, only to discover that turning a hobby into a business sucked all the joy out of it. She'd quickly closed it down and gone back to being a happy customer. Someone had invited her to be a judge at this very event, but she declined. And now, there he was, on her television. Richard, ever attentive to his wife, followed her gaze. He saw a handsome, clean-cut young man sitting at a table, brewing tea. The boy looked well-bred, innocent, like he'd never known a day of hardship in his life. Is my wife developing a taste for younger men? He wondered. Then he glanced at his daughter and saw that she, too, was staring intently at the screen. Usually when he asked them to watch the news with him, they just played on their phones. Put a handsome boy on, though, and suddenly mother and daughter were riveted. When the anchor said the competitor's name, Leo Foster, it rang a bell. Richard looked closer at the screen. Of course, it was the pig who was after his prize cabbage. The face was familiar from the portrait his wife had bought, and the identical one the boy had given his supposedly clever daughter. The camera lingered on him for several seconds. He looked so fresh-faced, so poised. For a moment, Richard thought he was watching a teen drama, not the evening news. Leo flopped over on the bed and rolled twice. Stella had just told him that her parents happened to be watching TV when the local news segment aired, and they thought he looked handsome. He was ecstatic. Stella was generous, a profligate gift giver, but she rarely ever praised him directly. It often felt like she'd give the same expensive gifts to anyone, that it wasn't personal. But a compliment? That was just for him. He couldn't help but kick his feet like a kid. It was a common saying that the camera adds 10 pounds, but the news adds 20. Yet on the screen, Leo had looked clean and sharp. Dressed in the tea ceremony robes, he projected an aura of serene focus. It wasn't just teenage boys who got crushes. Girls did, too. Sitting on the couch in the sunroom with her parents, watching him on the screen, Stella's heart had started pounding. She'd never seen this side of him before. Usually, she saw him as a little younger than her, not immature, but sweet, a good kid. Boys always matured later. She liked his voice, his fresh-faced kindness, his thoughtfulness. But watching him on TV, she found him inexplicably sexy. A kind of cool, collected sexiness. It left her feeling completely flustered. After the video call ended, Leo rolled around on the bed some more, then got a message from Stella. When you're done tomorrow, come check out Clearwater Cove. I got it pretty much set up. Leo replied, Roger that. Carrot, carrot. Then his phone started buzzing with a cascade of other messages. He figured a local news spot was pretty niche. It made sense that his dad would see it. Ever since Leo had started at Northwood State, his father had followed Bridgeport news and weather like a hawk. But he was surprised to see a message from Professor Reed, who was apparently still awake. Well done, Leo. Keep it up. Then, in the family group chat, his aunt had posted a screen recording of the segment, and the conversation exploded. The last time the chat had been this lively was when they were discussing his great-uncle's funeral arrangements. His mom forwarded the video to his godmother, Eleanor Shun, who in turn shared it in the blended family too. 0-foot group chat. Dr. Shun, well, look at my boy Leo making the news. My last appearance was just last week. Eleanor Shun, Leo looks so handsome on TV. Much more handsome than you. Shelley, OMG, OMG, I want to drink tea you made. Leo, next time I get the chance, I'll make some for you all. A moment later, Dr. Shun sent a flurry of Venmo payments to the group, $200 each. Leo accepted his with a thank you emoji sticker that said, Thanks, Dad, you're the GOAT. After the family chats died down, he was shocked to receive a message from Dean Roberts. Mr. Foster, I saw you on television. Congratulations on the win. You've brought honor to our country, and the university is proud of you. Leo, thank you, Dean. It was just a lucky break. Dean Roberts, this is a national-level award, isn't it? When you get back to campus, report it to the administration. We can apply for a grant on your behalf. And let's get a game of spades in when you're back. Leo, will do, and thank you, Dean. I'll look you up when I return. He sent the message and wiped a bead of non-existent sweat from his forehead. Getting a text from a university official had him sitting bolt upright. He'd been lying on his stomach texting Stella. It was strange. He posted on TikTok all the time, and no one batted an eye, even though his videos got way more views than the local news. But seeing it on an official broadcast felt different. It was like writing a web novel. Everyone reads them, anyone can write one, and it's no big deal. But once a book is traditionally published, it suddenly seems more legitimate, more prestigious, even if the ebook version makes more money. He'd barely finished his exchange with the dean when another message came in, this time from Professor Hoffman. Did all these old guys just sit around watching the news? What was with their synchronized media consumption? Professor Hoffman sent an emoji and then immediately started a voice call. Leo, that wild tea from Judge Cole? I haven't brewed it. I'm saving it for the next time you come over. Leo held the phone to his ear. You saw the news, didn't you, Professor? Not me. I'm not that diligent. I was playing a video game. It was Penelope who saw it. She called me. Want to know if we could use the news clip for the movie's promotional tour. Of course, use whatever you want. I posted on my TikTok anyway, Leo said. Good. We won't let you get the short end of the stick. If we use it in the official promotion, we'll cut you a check. I just got off the phone with Judge Cole, by the way. He was thrilled to hear you used his tea to beat the Japanese team. Said to thank you and told me to tell you not to get a big head. It's late, so we didn't talk long. Didn't want to disturb him. Leo was floored. Damn. Thank you, Professor. He was touched that Professor Hoffman would go out of his way to call the judge about it. He glanced at the family chat one more time. His Aunt Sky was gushing. Leo takes after me. Nephews are just like their aunts. I love tea. I think I have a great palate for it. His Uncle Clay, who rarely ever posted, even dropped a single smile emoji. The clip his aunt had recorded was actually pretty good quality, with a clear introduction. Leo figured he might as well share it. A young man couldn't be expected to achieve something great and not show it off. It was a normal human impulse. He forwarded the video to his Instagram feed. A moment later, Alex tagged him in the dorm group chat. Alex, damn, I thought I'd be the first one in our room to make the news. Jordan, you can still make the police blotter, man. Go big. You definitely get more airtime than Leo. Sean, Leo just got lucky. I'll treat you guys to dinner when I'm back. In her room across the hall, Jessica Monroe didn't have a bathtub, only a shower. Exhausted as she was, she forced herself to wash her hair and body before blow-drying her hair. The hotel was a definite upgrade from a dorm. Once her hair was half dry, she slapped a hydrating mask on her face. Too much makeup always left her skin feeling stressed. Mask in place, she lay down at the foot of the bed, her long hair cascading over the edge toward the floor. The room was cozy and warm from the heater, so she wore just a light pajama set. Lying flat, she held her phone up and scrolled through her feed, stopping when she saw Leo's post. Made it on TV penguin spinning emoji. Video Jessica tapped the video. For a split second, in one of the shots, she saw herself in the corner of the frame. It was blurry, but it was her. Leo, however, was in sharp focus, as if the camera was made for him. She saved the video, then switched to TikTok to watch Sean's full version. The clip of her was longer there. A wave of happiness and contentment washed over her. She was bone-tired, but her spirit felt light. Now, she could finally sleep. Meanwhile, Paige Kennedy saw Leo's post and immediately flooded the comments. Paige, OMG, why didn't you take me with you? I want to go. Paige, you look kind of handsome, I guess. Paige, now I want some tea. Leo replied to her last comment. Didn't you say tea was too bitter and you'd rather have a Coke? He learned from his interactions with Paige that people who were genuinely flirting didn't have long, drawn-out conversations in public comments. That was for group chats where everyone could see. It was 11:16 p.m., but Sean was too wound up to sleep. He took a quick shower and settled into the bed by the window. Leo had the one closer to the bathroom. The beds were large enough that they didn't have to touch, which made it less awkward. They'd certainly squeezed together in their tiny dorm beds before when a blanket got wet or the temperature suddenly dropped. Of course, normal guys just want to sleep without any weirdness. Usually, the four of them would just shoot the breeze before bed. Leo was physically drained. The act of making tea, of sitting perfectly still with that intense focus, was surprisingly taxing. The dinner afterward had also been a 2-hour affair, a mentally exhausting social performance that had yielded only a minor scar removal reward from the system. It meant the entire meal had been basically useless socializing. He figured he must be running out of scars by now. If daily activities all counted as missions, he should be completely healed. The last time he'd showered, he'd twisted around to check in the mirror, and the scar on his backside was definitely gone. Sean, on the other hand, was buzzing with excitement. Leo, he mumbled from his bed, if I could ever film you and make it look as good as it did on the news, that would be amazing. Watching Leo get flooded with calls and messages from his family after the broadcast had lit a fire in him. If he ever got on TV, Sean thought, he'd probably be 100 times more ecstatic than Leo. Leo was already fading. His usual bedtime was 11:30. You definitely can, he said, his voice thick with sleep. The world isn't short on smart people, Sean. It's short on people with the grit to stick with something. If we just keep at it, we'll make it. They exchanged a few more words before turning off the lights. The mattress was a little soft, but he slept soundly through the night. Maybe having Sean there kept him from feeling like he was in an unfamiliar bed. Next time you're traveling and can't sleep, just bring your favorite roommate along. Problem solved. Just kidding. Leo's eyes opened at 6 in the morning. He got up and mixed a small packet of acacia honey into a glass of warm water. He'd mentioned to Stella that he'd gotten used to drinking honey in the morning, and the next thing he knew, she'd given him a box of these single-serving packets, perfect for travel. After he finished getting ready, Sean was up too. Leo was going for a run, so Sean grabbed his camera to follow him. A new environment meant new footage. Besides, a professional photographer he followed had said that running with a camera was great practice for stability. It was a workout and practice in one. Leo had noticed yesterday that the hotel was massive, set within a sprawling garden complex with multiple buildings. They could just run on the grounds. That night, Mr. Mikami had suffered a rare bout of insomnia. He knew Mr. Yamada, the society's president, had returned late. Well, after midnight. He'd heard the door to the adjacent room close. But he himself had stayed up, lost in a rabbit hole. The Chinese version of TikTok was a terrifyingly addictive abyss. He had fallen in for an entire evening. His original intent had been purely academic. He wanted to observe Leo's daily life, to understand what kind of person could be dubbed a saint by his roommates. He was searching for the secret to Leo's tea ceremony. What he discovered was that, in some ways, Leo was a lot like him. Leo's life was disciplined. Daily runs, studying, exercise, reading. Mikami treated his deep dive into Leo's TikTok as research, taking meticulous notes, logging the time and activity of each post. Though Leo only posted once or twice a day, a pattern emerged over time. The man's schedule was packed. Of course, Mikami thought, success is never an accident. Leo is an incredibly hard-working person. But beyond the packed schedule, he noticed other things. The breadth of Leo's skills was staggering. He was an expert organizer, a skill Mikami considered fundamental to the tea ceremony. A tea master must first be a master of arrangement, creating a space of pristine, minimalist tranquility. But Leo's talents didn't stop there. His cooking skills were excellent. He'd even seen a video of him dispatching and preparing a live fish. He was a skilled fisherman, a talented equestrian, a good tennis player, a gifted painter. Apparently, he was an amazing photographer too. It was as if Leo was a master of all trades. Mikami noticed that in 2 separate running videos, the same girl appeared, though her face was never shown. Judging by her legs, their length and shape, he was certain it was the same person. This must be the girl Leo liked. It wasn't Jessica. She wasn't that tall. He also concluded that Leo's family must be incredibly wealthy, perhaps even aristocrats, like his own family in Japan. Of course, he thought again, effort alone isn't enough. There must be a deep foundation of resources and heritage. The Mikami family was noble, after all. Though Leo's style was simple and unadorned, the places he frequented, deep-sea fishing trips, the watch occasionally visible on his wrist, spoke of understated affluence. After hours of analysis, Mikami was more confused than ever. He tossed and turned, sleep eluding him until the early morning, only to be woken by his biological clock and his alarm. A student of the tea ceremony could not afford to sleep in. Though exhausted, he forced himself out of bed. Yesterday's poor sleep was yesterday's problem. To let it affect today would be to carry a failure forward. One must not allow the mistakes of the past to taint the present. He showered and changed into a traditional Japanese robe. He looked good in a suit, but he preferred the comfort of his robes. He'd once wanted to grow his hair long, but his grandfather had forbidden it. Watching Leo's videos all night, a thought struck him. Perhaps his failure lay in his unwillingness to rebel. In every video, Leo approached each task with total focus and commitment. And most importantly, he always seemed happy. He was always smiling. Mikami, on the other hand, was always conscious of his identity, of the burden of his family's legacy. He couldn't even make a small choice like growing his hair out. How could he possibly revitalize the art of tea? He stepped onto the balcony. The Chinese-style hotel room featured a large, furnished balcony overlooking a beautiful garden, a riot of red, yellow, and green autumn leaves. The landscaping wasn't as refined as his family's private estate, but that was an unfair comparison. He took a deep breath and began the morning exercises his grandfather had taught him, a routine he claimed was the secret to his longevity and vitality. It was a family secret, and he'd been strictly instructed to perform it daily. The loose robes were perfect for the movements. Anyone familiar with Qigong would have immediately recognized the routine as Bajuanjin. As he moved through the sequence on the balcony, feeling his energy slowly returning, he saw a young man run past on the path below. It was Leo, and trailing right behind him, keeping pace, was a personal cameraman. Mikami nearly lost his balance mid-stretch. As Leo ran, the system's mechanical voice suddenly chimed in his head. Congratulations, host. Your efforts with the gold-tier single male, Mikami Dekusho, have been highly effective. His favorable impression has reached 75. His admiration for you is now second only to that for his grandfather. Please continue your efforts and strive for new heights. Did that guy spend the whole night thinking about me? Leo wondered. Why the sudden jump in affection? Wait a minute. Mikami is single. Don't tell me he's... The thought made him shudder. He picked up the pace, running faster. After returning home, Mr. Mikami would become a dedicated TikTok enthusiast, a firm believer that to make a viral video, one must be bold. The breakfast was a lavish buffet in the West restaurant of the neighboring Huating building. After their run, Leo and Sean piled their plates high with carbs. At their age, they could eat whatever they wanted and not gain a pound, Jordan accepted. Jordan had been big when they met as freshmen, and now, as a senior, he was an even bigger big guy. Looking back, Leo couldn't even remember him ever being thin. During breakfast, Leo ran in a joy run and waved her over. She came and sat with them. A moment later, Jessica Monroe appeared and joined their table as well. Outside of school, being from the same university made them feel like close friends. The dining room was bustling, and their breakfast was a lively affair. Leo noticed Jessica seemed a little on edge. It was early, yet she already had a full face of makeup on, a sort of peachy, flushed look with blush on her cheeks and a hint of red at the corner of her eyes. It was a bit dramatic, but it looked good on her. Her long hair, which must have taken ages to style, looked sleek and flowed perfectly. She radiated a kind of intense, proactive energy, a full steam-ahead worker bee, ready for the day. The morning's event was just an awards ceremony from 10:00 to 11:30. As Leo's group was finishing up, Mr. Mikami and his delegation arrived. They exchanged brief greetings before Leo and his friends headed back to their rooms. With time to kill before the ceremony, Leo decided to make the most of his residual buff. He pulled up some Japanese language tutorials on his phone. Learning while the effect lingered would be far more efficient. Even after the buff faded, the knowledge would leave a trace. When it was time, they headed to the venue. Today, he didn't have to wear the formal robes, so he just wore his own clothes. He was grateful Shelley had picked out some decent outfits for him. They were nice enough for an award ceremony. The event itself was brief, some mingling, the awards presentation, and a photo op where Dr. Sterling and Mr. Yamada exchanged specialty gifts from their respective countries. There were cameras everywhere. Leo knew the news would be all over the internet soon enough. He noticed Dr. Sterling and Mr. Yamada seemed much friendlier today. Despite the loss, there was no animosity between them. How can they be so magnanimous? He whispered to Joy. Shouldn't they be angry? Joy leaned in. Dr. Sterling and Mr. Yamada apparently reached a partnership agreement. They both own tea plantations, so they're going to collaborate. It's a win-win. Not for Mr. Mikami, Leo thought. He was the one who lost. In the old days, wouldn't he have been expected to perform seppuku on the spot? Thank God that custom hadn't survived. The last thing Leo needed was to be indirectly responsible for someone's death. Finally, Leo received his prizes. Since Mr. Mikami had given him a canister of Summit of Snow's tea, the Emperor's personal blend, basically the Japanese equivalent of Dragon's Robe, Leo felt he should offer something in return. He asked Joy for a small, elegant tea canister, choosing a turquoise blue one that she said retailed for around $200. It's from Dr. Sterling's own ceramics factory, she explained. The cost is about $50. Just reimburse me for that. He took one of his 3 remaining packets of the wild tea and placed it inside the canister. He presented it to Mr. Mikami. "This is the wild tea from yesterday's competition," he said, a bit apologetically. "It's from an unknown mountain, handpicked and processed for an elder who enjoys it. There isn't much, but I wanted you to have some as a keepsake." Mr. Mikami inhaled its scent before accepting it with a serious nod. He insisted on getting Leo's address, promising to send him something from Japan. Leo gave his university address, and in return, Mikami gave his. The Sanshin Tea Society, Tokyo. Everyone in the country knew it. They exchanged contact information, and with that, the trip was over. It seemed to be a happy ending for everyone. Though Mikami had lost the competition, he felt he had gained something far more valuable, a new direction for his growth. Before, he had felt he was at his peak, full. Now, after meeting Leo, he realized he was empty, with so much more to learn. How could a hollow man ever brew truly great tea? He would now focus on filling that void. Mr. Yamada, meanwhile, had been up half the night wheeling and dealing with Dr. Sterling. The two old foxes had forged a new alliance. He'd been worried about how to console Mikami, but the young man had consoled himself, returning with a renewed sense of purpose. Youth was a wonderful thing. The event was a complete success. They even agreed to a rematch next year. Leo thought that was the end of it, but Dr. Sterling pulled him aside. He presented Leo with a certificate, Senior Technician, National Vocational Qualification Level 1. Normally, the tea arts had 5 certification levels: Junior, Intermediate, Advanced, Technician, and Senior Technician. To even test for the intermediate level, you needed 2 years of professional experience after getting your junior certificate. Getting to the senior level could take a decade or more. Most who achieved it were well into their careers. The only exception was for those who won a major international competition and brought honor to the country. It was an automatic qualification. So now Leo was Leo Foster, Senior Technician. For a college student, a certificate like this was an incredible prize. It qualified him to open his own school and teach. He had his entry ticket to the industry. "There's still time this year, Dr. Sterling said. "I'll submit the application for your professional title. A senior technician can apply for a level 1 national title. With that, you'll have an easier time getting residency in any city. It gives you extra points. You might have to apply for level 2 first, but I'll see if we can get it expedited." Leo hadn't even considered professional titles or residency points. He'd never imagined living in a city where he couldn't afford to buy a house anyway. But for a student, more certificates were always better. Then, he remembered Alex had asked him to buy some tea. He asked Dr. Sterling if he had any recommendations for something high quality but reasonably priced. "Of course. You came to the right place. I'll get you the best. If you say a tea is good, it'll probably sell better. You could post it on TikTok or something." Leo winced. The man was always a businessman. "Professor, I'm just buying a little for myself." All right, I won't pressure you, Dr. Sterling laughed, knowing better than to shear one sheep too many times. He had Joy take Leo to choose something. Leo knew how to brew tea, but he was no expert at selecting it. He let Joy make a recommendation. "It's probably for a middle-aged man," Leo offered. "Then this Jinju-mei is an excellent choice," she said, brewing a cup for him to try. Leo happily drank the tea Joy prepared. No wonder she was still by Dr. Sterling sighed when so many others had left. Her tea was better than his own, more professional, with a cleaner taste, and her knowledge was far more comprehensive. The tea retailed for about $800 a pound, with occasional sales. The wholesale price for a large order was 70% off and 60% off for a small batch. For Leo, she gave him the cost price, 80% off. Even at $160 a pound, Leo felt it was steep. He texted Alex, who told him to get 3 pounds. In the end, Leo bought 5. Alex paid him for his 3, covering Leo's own 2 pounds as well. It was mainly for gifting, after all. The packaging was beautiful, with half-pound portions in elegant, antique-style tin canisters. Sean would take Alex's tea back to campus. Leo, laden with his winnings, headed for Clearwater Cove. He carried his bags inside. His slippers were waiting by the door, and his coat rack was there. A moment later, Stella emerged from the kitchen, wearing a white dress under an apron. "I'm making you instant noodles," she announced brightly. "I'm on the boiling the water step." Suddenly, Leo was struck by the strange, wonderful feeling of being an old married couple. He was home from a trip, bags in hand, and his wife was emerging from the kitchen, smiling, to welcome him. Stella was determined to boil instant noodles. Leo peeked into the kitchen. She was serious. On the counter, besides 2 packs of ramen, sat a head of Napa cabbage, 18. 30, a box of organic beans, 18. 30, a box of organic bean sprouts, 18. 30, a box of organic beans, 12. 90, and a tray of snowflake marbled Wagyu beef, $599. She was clearly aiming for truth in advertising. If the package said braised beef noodles, there would be actual beef. Leo watched her staring intently at the pot, waiting for the tiny bubbles to swell into large, rolling ones. She was a woman of principle. My plan was to prep the vegetables while the water boiled, she explained earnestly. Then, once it was boiling, I'd add the noodles. But then I went online to figure out whether the beef or the vegetables go in first. And by the time I looked up, the water was already boiling and the vegetables weren't even washed. Leo stepped behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and untied her apron, fastening it around himself. I'll take it from here. He might not be a gourmet chef, but when it's a luxury instant noodles, he was a pro. He swiftly tore the plastic off the cabbage and sprouts. He had no idea which grocery store sold such pricey produce. Where did you get these? He asked. I brought them from home, Stella said. Leo paused. Of course. He'd cooked a whole live fish before. This was nothing. He washed the vegetables, let them drain, and unwrapped the beef. It was soft to the touch, not thinly sliced, but about a quarter-inch thick. He noticed Stella had a tablet propped up on the counter. On the screen was a list: cabbage, 5 to 10 minutes, sprouts, 3 to 5 minutes, beef, 1 to 2 minutes, noodles, 2 to 3. She was meticulously planning the permutations. Her logic seemed sound. Add cabbage first, then sprouts, then noodles, then beef, all according to the timer. All she needed was a stopwatch to be truly scientific. Leo switched on the range hood. The fan whirred to life. Why don't you wait outside? I'll be quick. She shook her head. I want to watch and learn. Food had never been a concern for her. She didn't have a particularly strong desire for it. She could enjoy fine dining, but was just as content with simple fare. But when she actually tried to make something, she found it surprisingly complicated. She watched Leo move, his actions clean and efficient, completely ignoring her carefully researched timetable. He made it look effortless. When he brought out 2 steaming bowls of deluxe noodles, he'd even poached an egg in each. It was a true masterpiece. Meat, vegetables, and an egg, perfectly portioned. He remembered Stella had a healthy appetite. At 5'7", she was tall for a woman, sometimes appearing as tall as a 6-foot man, especially if the man was fudging his height. The noodles were perfectly cooked, soaked in a broth fragrant with the sweetness of the cabbage stalks and the soft earthiness of the leaves. The bean sprouts added a satisfying crunch, but the beef was the star. He didn't know if it was truly worth $599, but it was unbelievably tender, melting in his mouth with a rich, savory flavor that felt more like fat than lean meat. It was so rich it bordered on greasy, but split between 2 people, it was perfect. After the meal, they were both full, their stomachs pleasantly round. Normally, after a satisfying meal, he'd collapse on the couch and text Stella. But now she was right here. It felt new, a little strange. What do you usually do after you eat at home? He asked. She thought for a moment, then led him out the door. She drove them to a mall he vaguely recognized. On the 4th floor was a storefront with an enigmatic name, The Crucible. The reception area looked more like a corporate office than a retail space, with a single coffee table and a glass wall. Stella walked in like a regular, and the receptionist greeted her warmly, leading them inside. Leo, despite his curiosity, maintained a calm expression, having seen his fair share of unusual places lately. Inside, he was surprised to find a high-end boxing gym. So these places really existed outside of movies. Stella didn't get a trainer. She retrieved gear from a locker and asked the receptionist for 2 pairs of men's boxing gloves. Then she led him to a private training room. It was a spacious, glass-walled studio with a heavy bag in the center, designed to look like a professional boxing ring. The glass walls had 2 modes, one where they could see out but no one could see in, and another that projected a cheering crowd, simulating the pressure of a real match. Every time Leo thought he had Stella figured out, she revealed another side of herself. He watched as she changed into workout shorts and a tank top, strapped on her gloves and protective gear, and began methodically pounding the heavy bag. Each punch landed with a solid, resonant thud, sending the bag swaying. The gentle taps she'd given him in the past were clearly her holding back. A real punch from her could probably cause internal injuries. She wasn't just playing around. She was focused, powerful, and completely unconcerned with her appearance. She rarely wore makeup, maybe just lipstick, but here, with sweat beading on her forehead and her hair in disarray, she seemed utterly happy, relaxed, and free. When she got tired, she simply plopped down on the mat. In that moment, Leo thought of Jessica in her full face of makeup. People really were so different. This was Stella's life, and that was Jessica's. After warming up, she started to teach him. Leo designated it a boxing study task, and the system immediately provided him with a training simulator. The time dilation buff and the simulator were the two things the system offered him for free. Stella was amazed at how quickly he picked it up. It had taken her several lessons just to master the basic stance. Boxing was a cathartic release, the polar opposite of the tea ceremony. Tea required absolute stillness. Boxing demanded total motion, power, evasion, and endless punches. Even as a beginner, Leo found it incredibly fun, and he was soon drenched in sweat. The time flew by. They practiced for over an hour, focusing on footwork, punches, and dodges. He half expected to learn about clinching and grappling, but they were nowhere near that stage. Afterward, they showered. He was thrilled to have learned a new skill. As he sat waiting for Stella, the system's voice echoed in his mind. Host has studied boxing with focus and humility. Reward: Basic Boxing Proficiency Level 2, Provisional. Skill will become permanent after 3 more practice sessions. He looked up as Stella walked out, her hair half dry and still a bit messy, her face flushed from the hot water. "Did you like it?" she asked. "I loved it. It was a lot of fun." Stella walked to the front desk and had them set up a membership card, then loaded it with a significant sum of money. Leo saw the numbers on the screen. $100,000. He silently counted the zeros. 100,000? She handed the card to him. "You can use this card or just give them your phone number next time. You should book a trainer in advance. They have some of the best, national champions, Asian Games medalists. They're expensive, but they're worth it." As they left, Leo glanced back at the sign for the Crucible, still marveling that it was a boxing gym. At those prices, he supposed they didn't need the average person to understand what they were. On the way back, Stella drove her black Maybach, a car with 2 overlapping M's. It seemed all cars with 2 overlapping letters were expensive, like the 2 R's of a Rolls-Royce. Leo sat in the passenger seat, the air filled with a unique, pleasant fragrance. "Why did you decide to learn boxing?" he asked curiously. "My dad made me. I started learning this stuff when I was a kid, boxing, MMA, martial arts. He said I have a difficult personality and was worried I might end up in an abusive relationship, so he wanted me to be prepared." Leo was speechless. Mr. Vance truly was a man who planned for every contingency. They had eaten, they had exercised, and now they were home. What did it feel like to ride in a Maybach? It felt like fumbling for the door handle, which was practically invisible. You couldn't just Google how to open a Maybach door from the inside. The search results would tell you to simply press a button above the seat, and the door would open automatically. But they wouldn't tell you where the button was. You had to experience it. The best way to learn was to do it once, then do it a few more times until it became muscle memory. Once again, Stella had to lean over and open the door for him. He suddenly discovered another benefit of the car. For her to help, she had to practically throw herself into his lap in the close confines of the vehicle. The sensation was stimulating. Back inside the house, it finally hit him why it felt like coming home. Hanging in the 2-story living room was a painting of him. He'd been so focused on making dinner when he first arrived that he hadn't taken a proper look around. Though the deed was in his name, the house had never felt like his, probably because it had come too easily. Stella said she wanted tea, and Leo readily agreed. Being together meant they could do many things. He arranged his prizes in the tea room. An antique iron kettle with plum blossom carvings, a small golden teapot made by the master craftsman Izumi, half a pound of certified second-generation Da Hong Pao, a canister of the Emperor's Summit of Snows, the 2 pounds of Jinju Mei he'd bought, and his 2 remaining packets of wild tea. "Which one do you want to try?" he asked. "The Jinju Mei." Leo opened a canister, ready to try himself. Joy had brewed it for him earlier, and it had been excellent. As he prepared the tea, a sense of tranquility settled over him. His experience with the Zen mind buff had left a lasting impression, making it easier to find that state of serene focus. He was wearing a simple, thin, cream-colored sweater and gray-brown pants, his jacket hanging by the door. On a handsome man, the simple, well-fitting clothes were an enhancement, creating an air of clean elegance. Stella had changed into comfortable loungewear, a white set of long pants and a matching top, with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. It was a very princess-like outfit, probably not something she'd buy for herself. She sat cross-legged across the tea table from him, looking happy. Seeing him on TV had made her heart race, and being with her parents had made her feel inexplicably guilty. Today, she just wanted to watch him make tea. The cool, collected version of him she'd seen on the screen held an immense attraction. The first time she'd felt that pull, that physical desire, she'd gone boxing to burn it off. But now, sitting in the quiet tea room, she felt it again. The house was large, but this room was an intimate, self-contained space. Earlier, when she'd leaned over him to open the car door, it had been intentional. She had felt his breath catch. The tea room, with its Japanese-style tatami mats, embodied a minimalist, tranquil beauty. She thought the strange feelings from last night were just a fluke, a normal part of a new relationship. But now, watching him sit so serenely across from her, he suddenly felt very far away, even though they were face to face. She took a sip of the tea he offered. It was subtly sweet on the tongue, with an even sweeter aftertaste that was enhanced by a faint, clean bitterness. The right kind of bitterness could be calming. She drank another cup. Stella was a person who confronted her desires directly. It was just like the time she'd brought pajamas to what was supposed to be a simple dinner date. And so, as Leo sat there, lost in the quiet ritual of brewing tea, a person like a playful puppy came up behind him, held his face, and kissed him with the taste of tea on her lips. She wrapped her arms around him, pulling him out of his meditative state and back to reality. Girls always like to challenge the impossible. For a fleeting moment yesterday, Jessica had imagined doing the very same thing. But she had only imagined it. Stella acted on it. She kissed and nipped at him playfully. Leo tried to push her away. Don't mess around. I'm still making tea. But Stella was surprisingly strong. The tatami mat was very convenient. Leo found he couldn't resist her advances, his body responding with an eager heat. But he was still under the effects of the ED side effect. It was just a side effect, not true impotence, so the desire was very real. Night fell outside, the air in the room growing thick and heavy. Suddenly, Stella jumped up and ran out of the room, leaving Leo lying on the mat. A moment later, she returned, looking incredibly apologetic. She'd gotten her period. She had seduced him, worked him into a frenzy, and then her period had arrived. She looked guilt-ridden. When Leo heard the news, he almost fell to his knees in gratitude to Mother Nature. If things had progressed, she would have discovered his temporary problem, and the illusion would have been shattered. It's okay, he said, his voice a little hoarse. I'm happy just holding you. We don't have to do anything. Are you sure? Stella asked, her head bowed. I mean, I can help. Really, it's fine. Inwardly, Leo thanked Aunt Flo and all her ancestors. He went to wash up, and so did she. The bed was huge and soft. Tonight, Leo had told his roommates in the group chat that he had something to take care of and would be back tomorrow. They had all responded with winking emojis, understanding completely. Leo's eating well tonight. In reality, Leo held Stella in his arms, gently rubbing her stomach. He did nothing else. A perfect gentleman. He was either a saint or a complete loser. He woke up in the morning with a sore shoulder, a stiff neck, and aching arms, as if his invisible wings were bruised. It was undoubtedly from yesterday's boxing practice, from using muscles that had never been pushed so hard. Then, to his delight, he realized the side effect was over. Hallelujah! The morning was off to a very positive start. A soft, warm body was curled up next to him. And then, nothing. The bleeding maiden was pliant and limp, but she was off the menu. Leo discovered that this version of Stella was different from her usual self. Normally, she had a cool, unapproachable aura, a kind of zero ingratiation vibe that was the polar opposite of Jessica. But now, sleeping soundly, she was softer, quieter, cuddly. Leo liked pulling her into his arms and tucking her between his legs like a giant pillow. As he shifted her, she stirred, her voice husky with sleep. Don't. I'm not just holding you. He held her like a soft, melting popsicle, wanting to kiss and lick every part of her. I had a nightmare last night, he murmured. About what? Stella, now being squeezed tightly, felt something firm pressing against her. I dreamt you were beating me up, the whole night. Now my whole body hurts. Pfft. The absurdity of it jolted Stella fully awake. You didn't do anything wrong. Why would I beat you up? I know, but since I got beaten up all night, I think I have to do something bad now to even things out. Last night, in the throes of his side effect, desire had been an illusion. This morning, with the effect gone, he was full of vigorous, pent-up energy. Though the main course was unavailable, he could at least collect some interest. He declared he was a meticulous man and set a task to measure her dimensions, a mission the system promptly rejected, telling him to have some shame. Nevertheless, he diligently measured every inch of her skin with his hands, except for the bleeding parts, of course. After his thorough survey, he concluded her chest was 5 handspans wide, her waist a slim 3.5, her thighs 2, and her calves 1.5. Her ankle was so slender he could encircle it with one hand. The arch of her foot was delicate enough to be pinched between his thumb and forefinger. He could finally understand the perverse ancient fascination with foot binding. Leo wasn't grossed out by her feet at all. but Stella was... After he was done playing with her feet, she insisted he wash his hands before he was allowed to touch her chest again. Stella was exasperated. She couldn't reconcile the man currently wriggling around the bed from head to toe with the serene, celibate-looking figure who had been brewing tea. He was a whirlwind of activity, methodically touching and kissing her from top to bottom. She felt the blood flow more heavily. Or maybe it was something else. Her stomach started to growl. If it didn't get up soon, she was going to bleed all over the sheets. She gave him a gentle kick. He recoiled dramatically, his eyes tinged with red, looking up at her. She didn't know whether to laugh or be angry. But deep down, she was touched. If they had given in to desire last night, their bodies might have felt closer. But because they hadn't, because he had just held her all night, her heart felt closer. "Don't kick," he whined. "You'll break it. How about I help you out?" "With my hand," Stella offered with a grin. Leo squeezed her small, soft hand. Then he remembered that same hand, gloved, sending a heavy bag flying. A shiver ran down his spine. He decided against it, kissed her palm, and got up to take a shower. There were robes, but no pajamas for him. It was Stella's first time setting up a home, after all. After a few more sleepovers, she'd learn. He showered downstairs while she used the one upstairs. When he came out, she was already up and dressed in an even softer set of white pajamas, the fabric like a fluffy cloud. He loved seeing her like this, so soft and comfortable. He rushed over and stole a kiss. Leo was about to make breakfast when there was a knock on the door. Stella let someone in, and a full breakfast spread was laid out on the table. Juice, bread, congee, fried dough sticks, peanuts, side dishes, steak, salad, fruit. It was like a scene from a romantic drama, a private breakfast served in a hotel. Thankfully, the server left after setting the table and didn't linger to pour their drinks. It was the perfect meal for a morning after a lot of exertion, and it was delicious. From the dining table, they could see the river bay glistening outside. The sun was shining, but a strong wind sent ripples across the water. As they ate, the system's voice chimed in Leo's head. "Congratulations, host. Your efforts with the unlimited potential platinum tier, Sugar Mama, Stella Vance, have been exceptionally effective. Her favorable impression has reached 86. Please continue your efforts and strive for new heights." Her affection level had gone up, but they hadn't done anything last night. A little foreplay got him +1. What would the full deal get him? A jump to 90. After a leisurely breakfast, he had to head back to school, and Stella had to go home. She asked him to come with her, but he didn't dare. He felt like a delinquent lurking outside her parent house after stealing their daughter for the night. As a parting gift, however, he gave her the prize-winning Dahong Pao tea. Victoria Vance was complaining to her husband. "Do you know what your daughter took when she left yesterday? She took vegetables from the kitchen. If Tina hadn't told me, I would have never known." Richard Vance vaguely recalled his wife saying something about pan-searing beef for him, a plan that never materialized. He hadn't thought much of it. "So our daughter took it? What for?" "She can't cook. To make instant noodles. She took 2 packs of ramen, too," Victoria said, exasperated. She felt a pang of loss, the feeling that her daughter was growing up and flying away. They both knew what this meant. Their daughter, who had never shown an interest in cooking in her life, was suddenly trying to make food. Just then, Stella came home to grab something, finding both her parents there. They seemed to have a lot of free time lately, always appearing as a pair. She put the box of tea on the table, a gift from friend. Then she bounded up the stairs. Victoria and Richard exchanged a look. Their daughter seemed a bit sleep-deprived. They didn't dare ask. A moment later, Stella yelled down from her room, "Mom, I'm out of pads. Do you have any?" Victoria snapped out of her trance. Yes, I'll get them for you." Richard stared at the gift from a friend on the table. It was a familiar box of Dahong Pao. He'd once spent 50,000 yuan on the same tea as a gift for a government official, and that was at a discounted price through a connection. The economy was down, so the price might have dropped, but it was still a hot commodity. At first, Richard had assumed his daughter was just having a typical college romance. He hadn't been optimistic. Their worlds were too different. Without his interference, it would likely fizzle out on its own. But now, seeing the Dahong Pao, things didn't seem so normal anymore. The kid had something to him. He glanced up at the painting in the living room and rubbed his forehead. He really needed to get that thing taken down. It was just infuriating. For Richard Vance, any problem that could be solved with money wasn't a real problem. He didn't care that his daughter was lavish with her gifts. All of it was a rounding error, a small price to pay for her happiness and personal growth. As a businessman, he knew to invest where it mattered, and his daughter was always a priority. In fact, he encouraged her to spend. Money was part of her advantage. Why not use it? The idea of a wealthy person pretending to be poor to protect someone else's fragile ego was just stupid. He knew that a relationship between two people with such a vast economic disparity was unsustainable. It was like a business partnership where one party was perpetually weaker. They weren't a partner. They were a future acquisition. So, he hadn't worried about his daughter's relationship. As far as he knew, no one at her university came from a background that could even remotely compare to theirs. But now, looking at the gift Leo had given his daughter, he realized the value wasn't just monetary. The boy wasn't taking advantage of her. The painting he'd given her, an identical copy of the one his wife had paid $5 million for, was one thing. But this tea, this was different. It was the tea that had been featured on the news, the tea that had defeated the Japanese masters. It wasn't just a product, it was an honor, and the kid had just given it away. Suddenly, it seemed like his daughter was the one getting the better end of the deal. Ever since he'd made his fortune, Richard had never had to teach his daughter not to take advantage of others. It was usually the other way around. He knew that those who always took often ended up losing the most. Leo returned to school on a coach bus. After taking a taxi to the station, the bus ride felt jarringly different from his recent travels. He'd gotten used to luxury. Now, the bus felt noisy, crowded, and slow with its constant stops. He even found himself thinking that the time spent on this bus could be used for studying or something more productive. But the bus was cheap. A private car would have cost nearly $100. No normal person could afford to spend that much on daily travel unless they were making tens of thousands a month. When he finally stepped back onto campus, the air felt cleaner, fresher than in the city. As he was calculating finances in his head, his phone rang. It was Dr. Sterling. That application for your professional title requires a lot of information. High school, middle school, diplomas, a scan of the award certificate. I'll provide a letter of support from my end, and Joy will send you the digital forms. Dr. Sterling rattled off a list of bureaucratic details that made Leo's head spin. He only caught the last part clearly. And my university will also be awarding you a $3,000 grant. Furthermore, if you're interested, we'd like to offer you a position as an honorary professor in our tea studies program. There's no salary or work requirement, just the title. We might call on you for a guest lecture now and then, for which you'd be paid. Leo was stunned. He hadn't even gotten into grad school, and he was already being offered a professorship. It felt a little fast. Even if it was just an honorary title with no real power, it was still professor. He could already imagine it on his social media profile. Call me Professor Foster. Damn, that sounded good. Then he remembered his uncle was a Real Professor Foster. Still, an honorary professorship was a title bestowed by a university upon scholars who had made outstanding contributions. This was a big deal. Dr. Sterling, for his part, was also a bit surprised. He knew Leo had a talent for tea, but he never expected him to defeat Mr. Mikami, who was a legitimate master. But Dr. Arthur Sterling was a flexible man. Just as he had gifted Leo an expensive tea set early on, he was now showering him with every possible benefit. By doing so, he ensured that the next time he needed a favor, Leo would be happy to oblige. It was simply good relationship management. Thank you, Professor, Leo said sincerely. It's a small thing. There will be a ceremony to present the certificate. I'll have Joy coordinate the date with you. Okay. Professor-to-be Leo, Foster hung up. A moment later, a transfer of $3,000,000 hit his account. Dr. Sterling was a generous man. This 2-day business trip had been incredibly fruitful. Back in the dorm, Leo kept the news of his professorship to himself. He was learning from Alex. Don't announce things until they're official, or you risk looking like a braggart if they fall through. He arrived during the midday break. Everyone was in a room. Jordan gave him a strange look. Alex poked his head down from the top bunk. Sean was the first to speak. Leo, you're back. Jordan narrowed his eyes. Is that you, Professor Foster? Alex squinted. I think it is. Still Professor Foster. Leo's face flushed. How could they possibly know? A little action is still action, right? Leo, you're not having problems, are you? Alex asked with a dead serious expression. I know a good urologist. Get lost. Leo shot back, throwing his bag on his bed. She was on her period. How is that my fault? The room erupted in laughter. How did you guys even know? Leo asked, bewildered. I was bluffing, Jordan admitted, but you weren't swaggering enough. If you'd really sealed the deal, you'd be walking on air right now, not this calm. Alex grinned. I figured if you'd actually done it, you wouldn't be back for at least 3 days. Sean just chuckled from his desk. Leo stared up at the ceiling light. Aunt Flo giveth, and Aunt Flo taketh away. He had left a boy and returned. Still a boy. It hadn't been that long, after all. He had a few more contacts on his phone now, mostly judges and officials from the tea world, but he barely knew them. It was strange. You go to an event, and your social network suddenly expands, but the connections feel shallow. He could barely put faces to names. He was starting to understand the value of drinking at business dinners. You could share a table with someone and feel nothing, but if you made a point to toast them, chat over a few drinks, you'd at least leave as acquaintances. Alcohol was a strange buff. It amplified everything, but came with heavy side effects. If he amounted to nothing, these new contacts would slowly fade away, deleted one by one when they could no longer remember who he was. But if he succeeded, they could become opportunities. Having her contact info was a foot in the door. That was adult networking. Its foundation was usefulness. With his intelligence stat boosted, Leo found himself thinking about these things more often. In the past, he would have just been thrilled to have a bunch of important people's numbers. After dropping off his things, he went to see Moose. He'd been using the flip phone Paige had given him, but he found it clunky and preferred his old iPhone. Still, he'd accepted the gift, and since Alex needed tea, he decided to get a couple of canisters of the June May for Paige to give to her family. He'd learned that when it comes to tea, less is more. Too much of one kind, and you get tired of it. It loses its specialness. The same went for gifts. A couple of nice, square, antique-style tin canisters, half a pound each, made for a perfect, elegant present. He messaged Paige, and she came to meet him directly. Lately, it felt like he spent more time with her dog than with her. She had a class that afternoon, but had skipped it. She felt like Leo was getting busier and busier, and with senior year ending, their chances to see each other would become rare. She had a friend sign her in on the attendance sheet. The moment Moose saw Leo, he went into a frenzy, leaping up to plant his front paws on Leo's shoulders, sniffing his face enthusiastically. Paige, though not climbing on him, eyed him with the same intense curiosity, her big eyes blinking. Leo, were you possessed by someone else's spirit? I remember you used to get so nervous you couldn't speak when a professor called on you in class. Now you're on TV looking so calm. Paige had watched the video several times yesterday. Annoyingly, she could barely remember the old, awkward Leo. That night, she'd dreamed they were in class together, and the teacher had asked a question. Back then, she'd had a crush on him without realizing it, expressing it through the low EQ method of teasing him. In the dream, she'd raised her hand for him, telling the professor he had the answer. When the teacher called on him, he'd stammered, unable to get a word out. They had both been scolded, and she remembered the hurt look he'd given her. Waking up and watching the video, it was like looking at a completely different person. Leo felt a twinge of guilt. The change had been drastic, but no one else seemed to find it strange. His roommates saw him every day, so the change was gradual. His parents saw him through the filter of parental pride. Possessed by what? You idiot, what novels have you been reading now? He said, tapping her on the head. Her long, curly hair was thick and springy. I'm not reading any. The last one I read was too depressing. The main couple broke up. I'm bored with novels right now. She sighed. She didn't know what to do with herself. She hung out with her roommates, ate, drank, and shopped, but she had no goals. She'd panic about gaining a pound one day and then binge on snacks the next. The salary she could expect to earn after graduation wouldn't even cover her allowance. She used to think everyone was like that, just drifting, but now Leo was different. He was becoming more and more exceptional. On one hand, she felt proud of her good taste in liking him. On the other, she felt him slipping further and further away, like they lived in different worlds. She couldn't just tell him, don't work so hard, wait for me. Let's be directionless together. Besides, he was excelling, and they had never even been together. My dad actually likes tea, Paige said, fiddling with the canisters. I'll take these home for him. Thanks. Leo noticed she seemed uncharacteristically subdued. What's wrong? Did you get yelled at? No, my parents and my sister are too lazy to even yell at me anymore. I haven't done anything wrong. Maybe my period is coming. I don't know. I just feel down. I'm thinking a lot about the future, what I'm going to do. I feel so lost, like I'm just eating and waiting to die. She puffed out her cheeks, rubbing Moose's head until it was shiny. Leo winced. Her period again? Was every girl he knew synchronized? Is there anything you really want to do? He asked. It doesn't have to be productive or something people approve of. Just something you personally want to do. Paige thought for a moment, resting her chin on Moose's head. I just want to eat snacks, dress up, and look pretty every day, and hang out with you. Leo blushed slightly. The last one was a problem. Why don't you try this? Dress up, eat your favorite snacks, and film the whole process. You can review the snacks, talk about the price, the pros and cons. I see a lot of people doing that stuff on Instagram. Since you have free time, you could just focus on one snack a day. Make one video a day. Paige shot him a look. He was really trying hard to keep her busy and away from him wasn't he? Fine, she huffed. I'll do it. And when I get famous, I'm totally ghosting you. After seeing Moose, Leo left the 2 canisters of tea and 4 sausages and made a hasty retreat to the study hall. A student's main job, after all, was to study. He also felt a little guilty about his advice to Paige. He knew making videos wasn't easy. Watching Sean, he saw that his roommate spent at least 8 hours a day editing, more time than he spent just messing around on his phone. Sean was constantly cutting footage of clouds, the floor, the street, flowers, and splicing it together with music and effects. A simple, lively video was the product of immense, unseen effort. On a fast-paced app like TikTok, a single boring moment meant the viewer's thumb would swipe, and that chance was gone forever. But at least it was something for her to do. When you're feeling lost, the best thing to do is to start a project. The process forces you to solve problems, leaving no time for existential dread. And the feeling of accomplishment after finishing something, even if the thing itself is useless, is invaluable. Since Sean had started his TikTok account, he even stood up straighter. He had found his path. His channel, The Roommate Chronicles, was thriving because he was consistent, posting high-quality content at regular times, and he knew how to jump on a trend. The videos about Leo making tea and getting on the news had gone viral, with over 100,000 likes. His follower count was skyrocketing. Someone had even offered to buy the account for $10,000. The account's success was a combination of Sean's hard work and Leo's increasingly interesting life. One couldn't exist without the other. Leo figured Paige, who had never known a day of hardship, would probably give up quickly. As he walked toward the academic building, the wind whipped a series of red banners strung across the path, making them snap and flutter. He didn't pay them any mind. The university was always holding some event or another. As a jaded senior, he felt like the sky could fall and it wouldn't have anything to do with him. He reached his usual study hall and saw the 2 familiar NPCs at their desks. An immediate sense of calm and familiarity washed over him. This place was like a tower in League of Legends, a safe zone where he could recharge. The 2 NPCs were his teammates. Though he'd been annoyed with them about the stock market tips before, after a brief foray into the real world, he found their student-like earnestness refreshing. Colin Edwards was direct and transparent, and he brought Leo drinks and fruit every day. As for Wendy Lou, she was quiet and barely noticeable, just studying relentlessly, even after her boyfriend cheated on her. In terms of sheer persistence, they were both stronger than he would be without the system. He sat down, but before he could even open a book, Wendy approached his desk, holding out a large container of peach yogurt. Hey, long time no see, she said quietly. I got this for you a couple of days ago, but you weren't here. Her eyes held a look of near worship. She followed Sean's TikTok account, so she knew that while she thought he'd just been slacking off, he'd actually been winning a national competition and getting on the news. He wasn't just posturing, he was the real deal. Colin came jogging over, his face flushed with excitement. Leo, man, congrats on the award. Did you see the banners the school put up? I helped hang one of them. I didn't notice, Leo admitted. Colin grabbed his arm and pointed out the window. Look, that one under the tree. Leo looked. Under the tree, a couple was locked in an embrace, looking like they were about to kiss in broad daylight. Not the couple, dude, Colin said, exasperated. They're not going to kiss. I've been watching them for a while. Look at the banner. Leo's eyes shifted upward. A bright red banner read, "Fervently celebrate our student Leo Foster for winning glory for the nation." And below it, another. "Yesterday you were proud of the school. Today the school is proud of you." Leo nearly sprayed a mouthful of yogurt across his desk. Were those two supposed to go together? It didn't even rhyme. Alone, Plump Bird sat perched on a power line, looking a little foolish. The couple under the banner had finally moved on, having only hugged after all. The wind made the banners ripple like waves. Feeling a slight twinge of embarrassment, Leo took a picture with his phone. He sent it to the dorm group chat, the family group chat, and the blended family too. Zero chat. In the dorm chat, Jordan, well, look at Mr. Famous. Alex, my dream is to be Leo Foster. Sean, I'm going out to get some shots of this. Leo. In the family chat, his parents didn't reply directly. A moment later, his dad forwarded the picture to the extended family chat. Spreading the news was more important than replying. In the blended family too, zero chat, Dr. Shun, his godfather image of 2 banners. Fervently celebrate hospital director Stephen Shun's new pharmaceutical launch, and director Shun develops new drug after wife's constant stress-induced illnesses. Eleanor Shun, his godmother Stephen. That's enough. Shelly, my little bro is a rock star. Leo, cute emoji. Sending the pictures and replying to the comments took up a surprising amount of time. It was like posting on Instagram. The work didn't end after you hit share. You had to keep checking for likes and comments. He put his phone on silent and took out his Japanese textbook. He had to take advantage of the residual buff. On TikTok, Mr. Mikami had started sending him a Japanese phrase every morning like a diligent missionary. He'd picked up a lot of words from watching anime, so he wasn't starting from scratch. It was an interesting way to learn, like building the foundation under a pre-existing frame. The yogurt was finished, the greetings exchanged, the banners admired, the bragging done. He settled down to study, activating the 4x speed of the time dilation buff. The quiet of the campus, the perfect height of a desk. It was a sanctuary for absorbing knowledge. Hotels were never designed for studying. The chairs were always wrong. But a university campus was different. You could study anywhere. The 2 hours flew by in a blur of intense focus. When he was done, he felt his intestines start to move. He packed his bag, bid farewell to his 2 NPC friends, and sprinted to the bathroom. He emerged feeling cleansed and renewed, his mind filled with new knowledge and his body purged of waste. From their desks, Wendy and Colin watched him go with a hint of envy. He never seemed to study for long, but when he did, his concentration was absolute. They, on the other hand, always felt like there wasn't enough time. Still, they knew persistence was key. One day, they hoped, the school would hang banners for them, too. As Leo walked out of the building, the system's voice announced, "Host has immersively studied a language, grasping the method of learning by connecting new knowledge with old memories. Efficiency is remarkable. Reward, buff, boldness, one day. As long as host is brave enough to speak aloud, he will be able to master the knowledge. Is this just to encourage me to read out loud?" He wondered, what if I read my calculus textbook? Just then his phone rang. It was Dean Roberts. "Hello, Dean. Leo, you're back on campus, right? Join me for dinner tonight. Bring your roommate, Little Yang. We can play spades afterward." "Yes, of course, Dean." He hung up, slightly baffled. He had rarely heard anyone refer to Alex as Little Yang. It was always President Yang, Chairman Yang, Alex. He messaged Alex. "Leo, Alex, I need you to carry me tonight. Dean Roberts invited us to dinner and spades." "Alex, Professor Foster, you're too kind. It's clear I'm just riding your coattails." "Leo, you've definitely got some Midwestern passive aggression in you." He didn't have a spades buff today, but he figured it didn't matter. When you were nobody, you needed skills to impress powerful people. When you were useful, it didn't matter if you were any good. They'd make excuses for you. He had a tennis match scheduled with Professor Reed. He hadn't run this morning, so he needed the exercise. His new healthy habit was a daily run plus another sport. He also liked to walk moose, but that would have to wait until tomorrow. He decided to play with the long-lived Professor Reed. Being near people with longevity might make him live longer, too. Besides, it was through her that he'd met Dr. Sterling. It was only right to check in with his original mentor. He changed and headed to the tennis courts, where he was surprised to see Dr. Croft had been dragged along as well. She was supposedly at Northwood State for a health retreat, but judging by the dark circles under her eyes, it wasn't going well. Her income, however, was skyrocketing. As long as she lived long enough to enjoy it, her retirement was set. Though young, Dr. Croft moved like a ghost. Professor Reed, though elderly, walked with a vigorous stride. She was already warmed up, swinging her racket with a grin that showed off a neat row of dentures. "Leo, you went out for a spin and came back a big shot. Arthur can't stop singing your praises." "I just got lucky, Professor. The opponent underestimated me. I still have a lot to learn." Dr. Croft, standing nearby, let out a huge yawn, squeezing tears from her eyes. She used to think the kid was sincere. Now, after his little trip, he'd come back all slick and diplomatic. It was over. Her career as a portrait artist was finished. The tennis ball bounced against the gleaming hardwood floor, a rhythmic thudding sound filling the indoor court. After a few rallies, Professor Reed was starting to get the hang of it. Her swings were steady and slow, but she was consistently returning the ball. Tennis was a good sport for her age. It didn't require intense running or jumping, and if you had the right technique, you could control the level of exertion. Leo found playing with her relaxing. He was just one skill level above her, enough to cover the court and return her shots without overwhelming her. Plus, being young, he had the stamina for it. Their rallies were long and comfortable. When people exercise, their facial muscles naturally relax, sometimes even breaking into a smile. The body releases endorphins and dopamine, creating an involuntary sense of happiness that's infectious. Although Dr. Croft had been reluctant to come, she couldn't help but notice how much fun her old friend was having. And Leo was a perfect partner, matching her pace perfectly. Standing on the sidelines was getting boring, so she finally decided to give it a try. She'd taken lessons years ago, but had forgotten most of it. There was a period when she was obsessed with the Prince of Tennis, a fact that dated her, and had diligently learned the sport. But once the obsession with the anime faded, so did her tennis habit. Professor Reed told her to walk a few laps around the court to warm up first. "It's fine, Dr. Croft said, waving a dismissive hand. "I'll just hit a few easy ones to get the feel of it back." Watching them play, she felt confident she could handle it. So Dr. Croft stepped onto the court while Professor Reed took a 10-minute break. She tried to remember how to hold the racket, but when Leo offered a few pointers, the grip felt different from what she recalled. She wasn't sure if the new way was correct or if her memory was. Given how sports science had evolved, the modern technique was probably better. Back then, she'd likely been copying cool-looking but impractical moves from a show. Leo corrected a few of her stances, and she started to get reacquainted with the rhythm. A few swings in, the old muscle memory began to surface. It was definitely more fun than her usual morning stretches, and way more engaging than jogging. When it was her turn for a real rally, she was practically giddy. She could even serve, and she hit a tricky one designed to force a backhand return. Dr. Croft was feeling cocky. Leo didn't hold back, mostly because his skill level wasn't high enough to gracefully let someone win. All he could do was play his best. The worst kind of tennis is a match between two beginners, where every point is just a series of failed serves, and no one ever gets to return the ball. Dr. Croft was having a blast, but as she sat down to rest, she suddenly cried out, "Oh no, I'm done for." She clutched her back. "I think I threw something out." A sharp, searing pain shot through her right shoulder blade. It hurt to breathe. Her entire right arm felt useless, locked up by the agony. "It hurts. It really, really hurts." Leo and Professor Reed rushed over, not sure whether to laugh or panic at the sight of Dr. Croft sitting there, suddenly looking like she'd had a stroke. "Should we go to the hospital?" Leo asked. The word hospital made Dr. Croft's scalp tingle with dread. "No, it's not that serious. I just pulled something. It's been too long since I've exercised, and I probably overdid it." Professor Reed reached out and gently touched her friend's back. That's it. That's the spot. The whole muscle feels wrong." Even as she cried out, Dr. Croft kept her voice low. Shouting only made the pain worse. "You've definitely pulled a muscle," Professor Reed said with the authority of someone who had mastered the art of longevity. "Let's get you home. I have a heating pad. We'll get you warmed up, you'll lie flat, get some rest for a couple of days, and you'll be fine." Dr. Croft agreed it was probably just a sprain. The pain was localized to that one strip of muscle along her shoulder blade. Nothing hurt in her chest, so she figured she wasn't having a heart attack or some other freak medical event. Leo and Professor Reed helped her back to the apartment. Dr. Croft walked like a ghost, wincing with every step. The slightest jolt sent waves of pain through her back. When they stepped outside, she took a breath of cold air and coughed, which immediately brought tears to her eyes. The movement of her chest tugged on her back, and the pain was excruciating. Leo watched her, thinking this woman is so fragile. "Dr. Croft, I'm not asking you to live to be 100, but at least make it to 60. I was hoping to have a world-class artist as a mentor, after all. She's a vice president at the Bridgeport Institute of Fine Arts, one of the few living masters." Back at Professor Reed's apartment, Dr. Croft slowly made her way to the guest room, a cozy space behind a bookshelf. Leo had half expected it to be a mess, since Dr. Croft often had a disheveled air about her. But she was a true artist. Even if she looked unkempt, her aesthetic sense was sharp. A piece of clothing tossed on a chair would somehow land with artistic flair. Even sitting down was an ordeal. Getting into bed, she hissed and groaned dramatically. "It really hurts, I'm not kidding. The pain wasn't this bad after my last surgery when the anesthesia wore off. Why don't you just lie down for a bit and see how you feel?" Professor Reed suggested. Leo remembered he had a basic first aid skill, perfect for handling everyday accidents. And this was definitely a small accident. "Dr. Croft," he offered, "I know a little about physical therapy. Would you like me to try massaging it?" Dr. Croft looked at him skeptically. "You," she managed between hisses of pain. "SSSI, it hurts so much." She felt like a character in an old myth, writhing in agony. It felt like a tendon in her back was completely out of place, and she desperately wished someone could just put it back. Professor Reed remembered the wellness infusion Leo had given her. It had been surprisingly effective, giving her energy without the jitters, and she felt great playing tennis today, not tired at all. Leo elaborated on his story. "My grandmother was a head nurse. I spent a lot of time with her as a kid, And she used to take me to the hospital. I picked up a lot just by watching. There was a doctor there who was amazing at physical therapy. At this point, Dr. Croft was in too much pain to refuse. She just wanted relief. She tried to turn over onto her stomach, but bracing herself with her right arm sent another jolt of pain through her back, making her tear up all over again. Leo went to wash his hands. He'd just completed the tennis exercise task. The system pinged with a reward. Host has completed the exercise task with a positive and peaceful attitude and has shown improvement. Reward: advanced massage proficiency, intermediate advanced, 3 days. Perfect. He immediately set a new task for massage therapy. It was as if the system was setting him up for this very moment. With his basic first aid skill and the new proficiency boost, he should be more than capable. Dr. Croft painstakingly managed to lie face down. As a mature woman, she had a soft curve to her spine. Leo, focused on the task, placed a blanket over her lower back and legs. He stood by the bed, placed his long fingers on her shoulder, a third of the way from her neck, and pressed down firmly. The moment he applied pressure, Dr. Croft felt a deep, sore ache spread through the muscle. This kid wasn't bluffing, she thought. He actually knows what he's doing. He found the exact point of pain with one touch. As he pressed there, the sharp pain in her shoulder blade seemed to lessen. He then slid his palm down her back. Dr. Croft felt as if the displaced muscle in her shoulder blade, the source of all the agony, had been caught and was now being gently coaxed back into place. It was a strange mix of pain and relief. Oh, she groaned. Leo's warm hand pressed gently on her back, through the thin white t-shirt she wore under her tennis clothes. He pressed, released, and then pressed again, moving down. Dr. Croft felt her whole body start to loosen. At least she could lift her arm now, though laughing was still out of the question. It still hurt. What a disaster. As Leo worked, his mind was clear of anatomy charts and pressure points. Instead, he simply thought about how his dad needed dough, except dough was better. It didn't make noise, and it didn't squirm. Listening to her friend's groans become more and more robust, Professor Reed knew it wasn't anything serious. She was relieved. Young people these days were in such poor shape, even worse than an old woman like her. They stayed up all night, skipped meals, swung between emotional extremes, and never exercised. It was like they were actively trying to dangle themselves like a carrot in front of the Grim Reaper. Every press from Leo's hands made Dr. Croft flinch with a sharp, radiating pain. When he worked on her neck, the ache shot up into her skull. When he pressed her shoulder, it zinged down her arm. Anyone who's had back pain or spent too long hunched over a desk knows the feeling. A truly skilled masseuse finds every single one of your trigger points, and the experience is an exquisite blend of agony and ecstasy. The groans were from real pain, but after the pain subsided, the muscle beneath felt like it had been reawakened, as if a dead piece of tissue was slowly relaxing, ready to be overworked for another 500 years. That was exactly how Dr. Croft felt. The pain was real, but the relief that followed was incredible. Leo worked quickly. He wasn't a professional masseur from spa. This was more like the therapeutic massage you'd get from a physical therapist in a hospital, a targeted 10-minute session. The hour-long massages were for general muscle relaxation. A therapist's goal was to hit key points, manipulate tendons, adjust bones, and basically realign the whole system with a few sharp, efficient movements. And that's what Leo did. Armed with his new intermediate advanced skill, he worked with a focused intensity, like a storm tearing through and setting everything right. When he finished, Dr. Croft sat up. She could raise her arm. The memory of the pain still lingered, a phantom ache that made her wary, but the sharp, breathtaking agony was gone. It felt like her body had been completely reassembled. She could probably pull an all-nighter now. Still, as she yawned and stretched, she felt a ghost of the pain in her back. Leo, you're a miracle worker, Dr. Croft said, her eyes glistening with tears of pain and relief. You even know massage. Is there anything you can't do? She gently swung her arm, testing her back's new state. I heard Ms. Miller say you knew how to change dressings, Professor Reed added. And Dr. Evans at the health center said you knew your stuff. I thought they were exaggerating, but you're actually quite professional. News travels fast on this campus, Leo thought. He had helped Ms. Miller's son, Cody, with a bandage once, and somehow Professor Reed already knew about it. Yeah, I was even thinking about getting a nursing certificate, Leo said with a smile. The exam is in January. For a college student, the more certifications, the better, right? He turned to Dr. Croft. You should be okay now, but you need to warm up before exercising next time. And stay warm, it's getting cold out. Just rest up at home, don't go out in the wind, and walk around inside a bit to get your circulation going. Okay, I will, she nodded. After Leo left, Dr. Croft, in a classic case of near-death experience-fueled inspiration, leaped up. I have to paint. That feeling of my body being reassembled. I have an idea. A painting about deconstruction and reconstruction, about the human body. It would be incredible. Professor Reed firmly pushed her back down. Take it easy. Don't push yourself. A serious sprain can take weeks to heal. You need to lie down for at least 3 days. If you don't, you'll pay for it when you're my age. All the things you neglect when you're young come back to haunt you. I probably won't have to worry about that, Dr. Croft thought wryly. I doubt I'll live as long as you. But this idea is brilliant, Evelyn. It could be a timeless masterpiece, she pleaded. If you go paint now, Professor Reed deadpanned, it might be your final masterpiece. Dr. Croft slumped back, defeated. She had to admit, when she walked quickly, she still felt a twinge in her chest and back. For a moment there, she had genuinely felt broken, like an airplane that had lost a few screws in a critical engine. Leo left some tea, Professor Reed said, changing the subject. I'll brew some. Come, sit and drink with me. Life is short, only about 30,000 days. Drinking tea is an important part of it. If Leo were there, he'd object. For others, it might be 30,000 days. 80 years is 29,200 days. But not for Professor Reed. At 109, she was at 39,785 days and counting. If she made it to the end of her 109th year, she might even hit 40,000. When you live that long, anything is possible. Professor Reed knew how to brew tea. A long life gives you plenty of time to learn things. Of course, mastering everything requires a special talent. But for an ordinary person, simply knowing how is enough. A casual approach can also be a form of tea ceremony. Mr. Mikami's rigid adherence to ritual had, in some ways, lost the essence of tea itself. At the end of the day, tea is meant to be drunk. It doesn't matter if you prepared it while balancing on a knife's edge and jumping through flaming hoops. It's still just a beverage. She was fond of Jean Junmei, having tasted the finest teas in her life, as well as the bitter, home-picked stuff from her country neighbors. She was no snob. She calmly prepared the tea with a gaiwan, her movements fluid and practiced. Then she poured it into 2 large cups, one for her, one for a friend. The aroma was rich, the taste smooth. There was a slight astringency in the aftertaste that quickly gave way to a lingering sweetness. It was excellent tea. When the leaves are this good, even a novice brewer can't mess it up. One sip of the hot tea, and Dr. Croft felt like she'd been brought back to life. It was so unfair. She, Professor Reed, and Leo all went to play tennis, and she was the only one who fell apart. This tea is really good, she said. She wasn't a connoisseur, but she could recognize quality. Leo brought it. There are 2 tins. You could take one, Professor Reed offered. Dr. Croft took another big gulp, savoring the sweetness. It really is nice. Even I can tell, and I don't drink tea. I should buy some myself. Let me see the packaging. Being younger than Professor Reed, at least relatively, and an artist with a youthful mindset, Dr. Croft was tech-savvy. She knew you could take a picture and search for a product online. She snapped a photo of the tin canister with her phone and did an image search. The search results popped up. An empty canister, just like it was selling for $1.80. Maybe I did it wrong. She found a brand logo and searched again. This time, the result was for the tea itself. Price, $1,600 for 500 grams. This is how much tea costs. Dr. Croft was stunned. Professor Reed glanced over. You can search for things that way, she asked, intrigued. Oh look, there's one for $2.20. Dr. Croft tapped on it. The listing was for 50 grams. A single ounce for over $200. Yikes. He just casually left this here. I thought it was some $100 tea. Is all tea this expensive now? No wonder the stuff I usually drink is terrible. Having been old friends with Dr. Arthur Sterling, Professor Reed knew a thing or two about the market. This is the distributor price. The tea industry has huge markups, and the wholesale and online prices are completely different. Online sellers often list ridiculously high prices on purpose. That way, when a customer samples the tea in a shop, they search for it online, see the high price, and feel better about the shop's price. If they found it cheaper online, they'd just buy it there, even if you'd spend all afternoon serving them tea and snacks. But that's insane. Even at half price, I couldn't afford this. If you want good tea, just ask Leo. Haven't you seen the news? He won that tea ceremony competition against the Japanese master. The way he brews tea is mesmerizing. From now on, any tea he praises, people will probably be tripping over themselves to sell it to him at a loss. Dr. Croft took the phone her friend offered her. Dr. Sterling had sent Professor Reed the full, unedited video of Leo's final match against Mr. Mikami. It was, in a word, stunning. Watching the raw footage, Dr. Croft initially found the scene a bit chaotic, the contrast between the two sides jarring. But then the camera focused on Leo as he began to prepare the tea. She was so captivated she forgot to breathe. When the video ended, she took a deep gasp, a pang of something like regret in her chest. When he's making tea, he's like a celestial being. Evelyn, can't we just lock him in a tea room? He's only been out in the real world for a few days. How has he already picked up this indefinable vibe? Professor Reed sighed. It was hard to explain. Maybe old Dr. Sterling rubbed off on him. Arthur can be quite the character himself. Don't worry, she added. A few more days at school, and he'll be back to normal. Evelyn, Dr. Croft declared, her eyes blazing with renewed artistic fire. I need a paint now. Behave, Professor Reed said sternly. No, you don't. Leo said goodbye to Professor Reed and Dr. Croft and started walking back to his dorm. He actually felt like he could use a massage himself, but the old saying a doctor can't heal himself seemed to apply here. He couldn't exactly reach his own back. With a new skill on a timer, it felt like a waste not to use it. He found himself looking at everyone, wondering if their shoulders were tight. Stella had texted saying she wouldn't be back on campus tonight. She was on her period and not feeling great, so she was staying home. Back in the dorm room, Sean was hunched over his computer, deep in editing mode. He was tall, and the standard-issue dorm desk and chair forced him to crane his neck. Leo knew that posture had to be murder on his shoulders. Jordan, on the other hand, was an incredibly flexible guy. Though he spent most of his day playing games or occasionally making a makeup tutorial for his social media, he was constantly shifting positions, propping his feet up, sitting cross-legged, lying down, ensuring that every muscle in his body got its turn to be strained. As a result, he rarely complained of aches and pains. When Leo walked in, Sean sent him a video file. Take a look at today's edit. Let me know if anything needs to be changed. It was their routine. Sean would always get Leo's final approval before posting. He often worked ahead, editing videos that wouldn't be posted for a few days. Every time Leo watched one, he had the same thought. The Leo in these videos is so hardworking, so good-looking, so funny. He's really living his best life. The gap between video and reality was definitely real. Looks great, Sean, Leo said. Hey, let me give you a massage. I see you rubbing your shoulder all the time. It's fine, I'm good. Sean's protest was cut off by a muffled grunt. If Jordan hadn't been there to witness it, he would have assumed something very strange was happening in their room. Leo had pinched the muscle on Sean's shoulder and found a hard, tight knot. It felt even worse than Dr. Croft's. It was alarming that someone so young could be so stiff. It was a common ailment for photographers who spent years lugging heavy cameras, which often led to uneven shoulders. And Sean didn't just work long hours. He was under immense psychological pressure. It was the root of all his physical problems. He was constantly pushing himself, do better, work harder, stay strong, fueling himself with a daily diet of motivational quotes and instant ramen. His body didn't dare feel tired or sore because his mind would immediately dismiss it. The motivation was like a painkiller. He didn't feel the ache until one day the drug stopped working and everything would come crashing down. Leo could feel the muscle was as hard as a rock. He knew this would hurt, and it did. The pain shot from Sean's shoulder straight to his skull. With his strength buff, Leo had the power, and with his new skill, he knew exactly where to apply it. He was a natural. Superheroes like Superman would probably make the best massage therapists. They could pinpoint every knot with superhuman precision. Sean felt like every muscle Leo touched wasn't just sore on its own, but was connected to a web of pain that shot to other parts of his body. A pinch here sent a throb to his forehead. A press there made his knee ache. Leo, working on pure instinct, had Sean sit up straight while he kneaded and pressed. Since Sean was a guy, he could be less gentle, using broader, more forceful movements. After about 15 minutes of this comprehensive reconstruction, he was done. Sean stood up, feeling as if he'd grown an inch. He hadn't even realized how much he'd been hunching his shoulders against the constant, low-grade pain. Jordan, having heard Sean's pained cries, and Sean was a guy who never complained about pain, knew it must have been intense. When he saw Leo finish, looking like he wanted another patient, Jordan quickly waved his hands. I'm good. Totally fine. No pain here. Leo let out a breath of relief. He was actually tired. 15 minutes didn't sound long, but it was exhausting work. He put his whole body into it, like kneading a tough ball of dough, and was now lightly sweating. But it was also satisfying. Seeing Sean stretching his arms with a look of pure surprise on his face gave him a real sense of accomplishment. Thanks, Leo, Sean said, his voice full of gratitude. That was incredible. I've been getting headaches lately, and I thought it was from the cold wind back home. I never realized it was because my shoulders were so tight. My head doesn't hurt anymore. Of course, Leo thought. Sean's pain tolerance was so high he wouldn't even mention having chronic headaches. Later that evening, Leo had dinner plans, which included a game of spades with Dean Roberts. Alex was supposed to meet him, but instead, he texted Leo to go straight to the 6th dining hall. Leo didn't even know they had a 6th dining hall. According to the address Alex sent, it was located on the floor above the 2nd dining hall. If this were one of those creepy internet stories, half the student body would disappear trying to find this place. Leo took a quick shower, changed, and headed out. A young college student's internal furnace runs hot, but he knew he wouldn't be able to take these quick, chilly showers when he got older. He put on a set of clothes his cousin Shelley had given him. It's true what they say. Once you go up, it's hard to come back down. The clothes Shelley bought were just better. They had a sharper cut. The fabric felt more comfortable. He'd never thought twice about the clothes his mom bought him, but now he could feel the difference. Even a simple hoodie looked better when it was from a high-end brand, less juvenile, with a much better fit. Dressed in a clean, fresh outfit with a light jacket, he left the dorm. He had a decent amount of cash on hand now. Money seemed to be flowing in from various sources lately. Maybe it was time to buy some new clothes for himself. He thought about asking Stella to go with him. Her taste was impeccable. She never had a fashion misstep. He also wanted to buy her something. The prize money from the competition was $2,000, which should be enough. As he was walking toward the 6th dining hall, the system's mechanical voice chimed in his head. Host has diligently completed the massage task, greatly alleviating the suffering of others. For this proactive and positive action, which has earned the gratitude of others, Host is rewarded with an increase of +0.1 centimeter, applicable anywhere. Leo, now 5'8", 8-inch, took a long stride up the stairs. A voice called out from behind him. Hey, student, that way's closed. There's an elevator over here. Leo sheepishly turned back and took the elevator. When he arrived at the private dining room reserved for university leadership, Alex and Dean Roberts were already there. The dean stood up, beaming. Welcome, welcome. Our champion has returned. Leo froze, a little flustered. He instinctively glanced around, wondering if the dean was talking to someone else. Getting this kind of reception from the dean made him nervous. Alex, who had been wearing his usual polite but distant smile, broke into a genuine laugh at Leo's reaction. You're too kind, Dean Roberts, Leo said, recovering and shaking the offered hand, moving it up and down a few times. A few more of these dinners, he thought, and I'm going to become a real politician. Alex recalled the first time he'd met the dean. The man had been the epitome of reserved leadership, saying only 2 things the entire meal. Let's eat. And in principle, I can agree. It wasn't that leaders didn't like to talk. They just didn't like to talk to you. But when they needed to, they could be quite loquacious. Dean Roberts was in a talkative mood tonight. After Leo's earnest handshake, he actually chuckled. My, the hand of a champion. Just shaking it. I feel like my own shoulders have loosened up a bit. Leo thought, my massage skill must be radiating outward. Alex thought, another day, another chance to witness my roommate's masterful act of playing the humble underdog. The quiet guy is finally showing his true colors. Leo took a seat next to Alex, relieved that there was no awkward shuffling where the dean insisted Alex move so Leo could sit in a more prominent spot. Large group events are often a case of many hands make light work. But for dinner, the opposite is true. The more people, the less gets done. Big dinners are usually just for making appearances. You barely recognize everyone, let alone discuss anything important. The truly productive meals are small, intimate affairs where you can talk freely. A large group is like a public chat room, good for jokes and flirting, but any real business or backroom deal happens in a private message. Shortly after Leo sat down, the door opened again and Ms. Miller walked in. She was dressed in white athletic pants and a thin black puffer jacket. She took off the jacket to reveal a soft, daffodil yellow knit sweater. Leo and Alex both stood to greet her. Leo realized it had been a few days since he'd last seen her. Life had been busy and full. In just those few days, she seemed to have gotten even prettier. His first impression had been a woman with nice features, but a plain, no-fuss style, simple clothes, hair pulled back in a low ponytail. She'd seemed serious, though she had a lovely smile when a student made a joke. But the Ms. Miller standing here now had radiant skin. Her long athletic pants made her legs look endless, and she was wearing fuzzy Crocs adorned with little yellow and purple gibbets. The bright yellow of her sweater made her skin seem to glow. She possessed a soft, effortless beauty that you wouldn't find in a younger girl. Alex, who preferred the more naive energy of college sophomores, could appreciate her beauty but didn't feel any particular pull. Leo, however, felt a slight, guilty flutter. This was exactly his type, a woman with a touch of maturity. Dean Roberts, happily married to a formidable woman and with equally formidable parents, wasn't thinking along those lines at all. He had invited Ms. Miller for two reasons. First, she was President Grant's niece. While he was a dean, he was one of several, and President Grant was the one who truly called the shots at Northwood State. Second, Ms. Miller had been Leo's advisor, so their presence would make the dinner more comfortable. With Ms. Miller's arrival, everyone was there. She wasn't late, but as the last to arrive, she offered an explanation. "I was making dinner for my son. Sorry I'm late." "You should have just brought Cody with you," the dean said with a smile. "It's just us here." "You have no idea, Dean. Elementary school kids have so much more homework than we did. He missed a few days of school recently, so he's trying to catch up. He's doing homework until 11 every night. It's more work than my job." I told him to come out, but he refused. I even told him his hero, Leo, would be here, and he just looked miserable and said he had to finish his assignments. Leo had heard Cody complain. The kid got a grand total of 30 minutes of screen time a day, and he used a good chunk of it to text Leo and vent. There wasn't much Leo could do. He was a student himself. College students might not have homework until 11 at night, but the pressure was immense in other ways. Graduation was looming, and many of his classmates were drifting like ghosts, with no idea what to do with their lives. They were like outer disciples of a sect, about to be kicked out because they hadn't shown enough promise to advance. "You're only in elementary school," Leo thought. "You got a long road ahead of you." Ms. Miller sat down next to Leo, and a faint scent of gardenia wafted over. The dining table was small, but the private room was spacious. It also contained a tea table, a mahjong table, and a large window overlooking the lake. The heating was on, making the room cozy and warm. There was even a sofa by the window. Thankfully, no bed. The whole setup, with its dark wood paneling, felt like a private room in a high-end tea house, designed for entertaining. It wasn't uncommon for such places to have a full suite of amenities, dining, mahjong, and even a karaoke room, a one-stop shop for a full day of entertainment. It was more convenient than the older generation's habit of inviting guests home, especially since most people's houses weren't big enough to comfortably host. A server brought in the food, including a platter of large, fresh oysters. "These just came in today," the server noted. There were no lobsters or king crabs, but the dishes were beautifully presented and smelled delicious, with a comforting, home-cooked feel. There was pan-seared local fish with scallions and braised beef with radishes. Leo tried a piece of the beef. It wasn't as good as Ms. Miller's, but for a restaurant, it was excellent. The radishes, however, were perfect, sweet and crisp. Dean Roberts raved about the small local fish, which had been caught that day from the lake. Unfortunately, small fish like that were a gout-inducing nightmare, so he couldn't have too many. A small dinner with just 4 people felt like a meal among friends, and everyone could relax. Dean Roberts was completely without airs, remarkably down-to-earth. The meal was far more comfortable than the one Leo had endured the previous day with Dr. Sterling and the competition judges. That dinner had been so tense he'd left with sore shoulders from sitting ramrod straight all night, straining to catch every word and respond appropriately. He couldn't remember a single thing he ate, only that the rice was sticky and the soy milk was decent. Here, with only 4 of them, there was no need to worry about a lazy Susan. No one was drinking, either. University policy forbade alcohol on campus, even after hours. As a result, none of the places on the student strip could openly sell it. Dean Roberts was a true workplace veteran. He'd invited Leo to dinner because at the beginning of the semester, President Grant had tasked her deans with a goal: have a student win a national-level award. He had thought it was an impossible task and had already prepared his excuses for failing. But now, a golden opportunity had fallen into his lap. It was a bit unconventional. National awards were usually for things like math, physics, or scientific research, not for making tea, but a win was a win. This dinner wasn't just about celebrating Leo's achievement. It was about securing it for the university's records, which would, in turn, become part of his own list of accomplishments. He was a leader, but he was also pragmatic. Some bosses would have just summoned the student to their office and had them fill out the paperwork. But a talent like this deserved more than a bureaucratic formality. On campus, he was your student. Off campus, he could become someone you have to look up to. Dean Roberts was playing the long game. By inviting Leo, his roommate, and his advisor, he was building a relationship. The conversation flowed easily. Leo had questions about the paperwork for the award, and it was the perfect time to ask. Once the application is approved, I can help you with the forms, Ms. Miller offered. It's more tedious than it is difficult, Dean Roberts said with a laugh. He then shared a story from his younger days. The first time I applied for my Level 3 certification, the final step was getting a letter of verification from my previous employer. My old boss refused to sign it. I was so angry I was ready to give up on the whole thing. But my wife told me I was being hot-headed. She suggested I go to an even earlier employer. I did, got the letter, submitted it right before the deadline, and it was approved. He took another bite of food. While I was young, I was arrogant and hated all the red tape. I didn't want to ask anyone for favors. Now that I'm older and on the other side of the desk, I see the value in those procedures. Sometimes I wish they were even more detailed. It would make finding good people easier. Looking back, I realized my old boss didn't refuse me. I just asked the wrong person. I should have gone to his superior, but I asked a former colleague I was friendly with to handle it. He promised he would, but at the last minute he said the boss wouldn't approve it, and the whole thing got botched. He looked at the two young men. When you're young, every experience, right or wrong, is a lesson. It's nice to look back on it. I envy you too, getting to walk that road for the first time. Dean Roberts spoke with a candid sincerity, sharing his past failures without shame. I had a bad temper back then, stubborn and proud. I almost missed a lot of opportunities. Thankfully, I married a woman with a great temperament. She lets me have my way with the small things, but on the big stuff, she always guides me. Some mistakes aren't worth making. The cost is too high. If I hadn't gotten that certification, I would have been set back 3 years. By then, the policies might have changed, and my degree might not have been enough. Sometimes, one misstep can cost you a decade, or even your whole life. Leo and Alex listened intently. Alex thought to himself, character is destiny. With his personality, Dean Roberts will probably never move beyond this position. But that's not so bad. It's a comfortable life. Leo thought, the dean seems to be completely whipped. He can't go 5 minutes without mentioning his wife. Curious, he asked, Dean, your wife sounds amazing. What does she do? Dean Roberts looked almost sheepish. She's a civil servant. She works at the State Department of Education. The meal ended, no alcohol involved. They moved on to tea. It's best to rest a bit after eating before drinking tea, just as it's a bad idea to drink it on an empty stomach. But the time it took to prepare the tea served as a good digestive pause. With Leo, the newly crowned tea champion, presiding over the ceremony, the experience was elevated. Dean Roberts brought out his own private stash of fine tea, a single, unlabeled packet. Leo took a sniff. It was excellent. A clear, fresh aroma, with perfectly formed leaves and intact silver tips. It had been stored beautifully. I brought this specially for you, the dean said. I had to beg my wife for it. She got it from her boss. With you brewing it, I know it won't be wasted. Leo sat down, thankful that his one-day Zen mind buff had expired. If brewing tea made him feel emotionally detached for a full day every time, a few more sessions, and he'd be ready for a monastery. Even without the buff, he still had his intermediate tea ceremony skill. His recent exchange with Mr. Mikami had also given him a new perspective, a feeling that he was on the verge of a breakthrough. A few more practice sessions, and he was sure he could reach the advanced level. Recalling the experience of brewing with the Zen mind buff gave him a strange sense of clarity. It was like being a god for a day and then returning to mortal life, only to find that mortal tasks were now much easier. Leo's movements were steady and graceful as he prepared the tea, heating the water, warming the cups, all done without a hint of rush. It was deeply satisfying to watch. A few days had passed since the awkward moment between him and Ms. Miller. Neither of them had brought it up, and tonight she was perfectly normal and he was perfectly polite. He genuinely hadn't meant for anything to happen. He was just a young guy, drawn to a woman who was his type. It was like scrolling through TikTok and pausing for a few extra seconds on a video of a pretty girl dancing. You couldn't be sentenced for looking. It was human nature. As Ms. Miller watched the young man so calmly preparing the tea, she felt a strange sense of pride, as if she were watching him grow up right before her eyes. He was constantly evolving, changing with each new experience, and she felt like a witness to a process that was moving too fast for her to keep up with. It was like watching a flower bloom in fast motion, a spectacle too brilliant to fully grasp. In front of a student and a superior, Ms. Miller maintained a professional distance. But as she watched Leo, she thought, this is nice. On a cold winter day, a sip of warm tea could warm the heart. It was the perfect way to end a meal, soothing both mind and stomach. Dean Roberts took a sip and let out a sigh of pure contentment. Ms. Miller's expression softened as she drank, her features seeming to relax and brighten. Alex had tasted good tea before at his grandfather's house. Once your palate gets accustomed to the good stuff, it's hard to go back. Most tea you find outside tastes either bad or very bad, so he rarely drank it. He was always humble in public, a sign of his excellent upbringing. He never dropped names like my grandfather is so-and-so, or my dad is so-and-so. He could have rattled off a whole list of influential relatives. It was fate that had brought them all together in one dorm room. For Alex, it was a miscalculation. For Jordan, a wild stroke of luck. For Sean, a normal placement. And for Leo, a minor stumble. Alex held his cup and savored the tea. It was truly excellent. He was also reevaluating his assessment of Dean Roberts. Based on his demeanor, Alex had pegged him as someone who had hit his career ceiling. Now, learning his wife worked at the State Department of Education, he realized the dean's luck was more than just good fortune. Alex had interacted with the dean before, but only recently, after they started playing spades. He had been judging the man from a position of youthful arrogance. That was a dangerous habit, one that could lead to a fall. As he drank his tea, Alex silently chastised himself. The tea session was peaceful and pleasant. It greatly eased Dean Roberts' anxiety about having eaten the gout-inducing fish and oysters. Tea, he felt, could cure all ills. Ms. Miller sat quietly, serenely enjoying her cup. After 4 rounds, the session concluded. Then it was time for spades. Dean Roberts loved the game. He'd become addicted recently. Besides, it was more fun than working. But without the system's help, Leo was just an ordinary player. His IQ of 8 self was decent, but not brilliant. However, Alex and Dean Roberts both assumed he was letting them win. He had played much better last time. This young man is remarkable, Dean Roberts thought. The more he achieves, the more humble he becomes. Last time, he played like a shark to make an impression. Now that he's a champion, he's holding back, giving others a chance to shine. Alex thought, here we go again. The classic play the underdog routine. His expression is so sincere. I have so much to learn. If I had a national title at 21, I'd be insufferable. Leo, on the other hand, has become even more modest. Leo just thought, no, seriously, I'm just not that good. You guys are all sharks. Even Ms. Miller was a surprisingly sharp player. When she won a hand, a subtle, beautiful smile would touch her lips. The time flew by, and before they knew it, it was almost time for the dorms to lock up. The evening ended. Dean Roberts was reluctant to stop playing. He was having too much fun. Leo had considered giving the dean some tea as a gift, but he didn't know if Alex had brought anything. It would be awkward if he was the only one to give a gift. He decided against it, but figured he could give him some next time. As for Ms. Miller, he had just given her family's specialty grapefruits, so another gift so soon would feel like he was trying too hard. They parted ways. Leo and Alex walked Ms. Miller back toward faculty housing, while the dean headed in the opposite direction. The whole way, Leo felt like Ms. Miller wanted to say something to him, but couldn't find the words. When he got back to his dorm, he checked his phone and saw a notification from his bank. Bridgeport Bank, your checking account ending in 2098 was credited $1,000,000,000 on October at 21:50. Your new balance is $1,023,081,00. For a moment, Leo thought it was a phishing text. Who would randomly send him $1 million? He was about to call the police when a message from Ms. Miller popped up on his phone. Because of the information you gave me, I made that much in the stock market. I'm not good at trading, and honestly, it makes me anxious. Besides, that money doesn't feel like it belongs to me. If I accepted that much, I'd have to report it, and as a university employee, our finances are monitored. It's better this way. I'm returning it to you. Leo stared at the screen. What? As Leo stood there, stunned, his phone buzzed again. He thought it was another message from Ms. Miller, but it was from Jessica Monroe, the queen of side hustles. It was a direct transfer, $10,000,000. What is today? Leo wondered. National Deposit Day? Just this evening, Dean Roberts had mentioned that the university gives a $10,000 award to any student who wins a national honor. He had already approved it for Leo, and the money would be in his account within 3 business days. And now this for Jessica. Had she earned that much already? It had only been a few days. Does she have her own side hustle system? He tapped on her profile picture and saw her latest feed post. First time on the set of a web series. So fun. The accompanying photo showed Jessica in a historical-looking costume. So that's what she'd been up to since the tea event. The woman never stopped. She'd managed to land a role as an extra. Her network was truly impressive. But Leo remembered she was supposed to be on her period, and Stella had mentioned she got terrible cramps. This was more than just hustling. This was bleeding for her craft. He didn't accept the transfer. Instead, he replied, "You don't have to pay me back so quickly. I don't need the money right now." Jessica, "Thanks, but I'll feel better once the debt is cleared." Leo, "Take care of yourself." Bunny hug, sticker Jessica, "Thanks." On the walk back, Alex saw Leo staring intently at his phone and assumed he was texting Stella. He remembered that early, obsessive stage of a relationship where you could send hundreds of texts a day. He'd been there. Now he was jaded. The honeymoon phase, which used to last a month, now barely lasted a week before he felt tired of the effort. He saw his past self in Leo and left him to it, heading back to the dorm alone. Leo entered the dorm complex, but didn't go inside. Instead, he started walking laps around the athletic field below the building. It wasn't unusual to see guys in love aimlessly circling the track for an hour in the dead of winter, sometimes encountering other guys doing the exact same thing. A lonely pack of campus lovers. Since Stella was on campus too, they didn't talk on the phone that often. He always felt his voice changed when he talked to his girlfriend, not quite a high-pitched simp voice, but definitely a cleared throat, more formal version of his normal self. It was awkward to do that in the dorm with his roommates around. But now that he was outside, he gave her a call. "Are you feeling okay?" he asked. "I'm all right. My periods are usually not too bad. My mom is very particular about it, so I get a checkup every year with a good gynecologist. I rarely get cramps, just feel a bit tired. I just need to stay warm and rest. My doctor says it's best not to shower or do any strenuous exercise. She says each cycle is like a chance for the body to reset and recover, like a monthly reboot." Leo found that fascinating. It was the first time he'd heard described that way. The online jokes were always about how women were creatures that could bleed for 7 days straight and not die. He knew about periods from gym class, when girls would be excused, looking pale and clutching their stomachs. To hear it described as a reboot was a surprising and refreshingly positive take. It was a reflection of Stella's mindset. She rarely seemed down, always approaching things with a positive, logical attitude. They chatted for a few more minutes. When she heard he was out on the field, she told him to go back inside before he caught a cold. After hanging up, Leo walked another half lap in silence, then dialed Ms. Miller's number. He had an old habit of procrastinating when faced with a difficult situation, doing anything else until he was forced to confront it. Honestly, this was the most money he had ever personally handled in his entire life. It was a good thing it was just a number on a screen. If it had been cash, the shock would have been even greater. The phone rang several times before she picked up. He could hear the wind on her end, too. She must have stepped outside. "Ms. Miller, you really scare me with that transfer. It's so much money." Laura Miller pressed the phone to her ear, hearing the boy's soft voice and the same wind that was whipping around her. They weren't far from each other. The faculty housing was just across the road and up a small hill from the student dorms, less than a quarter of a mile in a straight line. "I've only ever invested in index funds," she said. "I had no idea individual stocks could be so volatile. So many people have been getting wiped out since the fall break." One of the other teachers bought a stock that dropped from $44 to $31 a share. He lost his entire year's salary. "It's terrifying." "Yeah, I don't usually trade stocks either. I guess I just got lucky," Leo said, listening to her voice, which sounded soft and flat over the phone. "But that's the thing, Ms. Miller. You made those trades. It had nothing to do with me. We were just talking. Investing was your decision, and the profit or loss is yours. You don't need to send me the money. It's too much." He still couldn't wrap his head around it. She had just, out of the blue, sent him $1 million. "You don't understand," she said, her breath a little heavy. "That much money, that much volatility. It's too much pressure for me. I don't need it right now. So I took out my principal investment. Even after sending you the money, I still made a profit, more than I would have with my index funds. You deserved it. I didn't. I thought about buying you a gift, but then I heard you have a girlfriend, and nothing seemed appropriate. So it's better this way. You can decide what to do with it." Before Leo could protest further, she cut him off. "Listen to me. Just accept it, and I can rest easy. Don't overthink it. You're still out on the field, aren't you? It's windy, and you weren't wearing much tonight. Go back inside. I have to go check on Cody's homework." She hung up abruptly. Her soft voice still echoed in his ear. Without seeing her face, just hearing her over the phone, she sounded almost like a little girl. The wind was picking up cold and biting. Leo started back toward his dorm. His phone buzzed with a notification. It was an update from a blog by one of his favorite authors. The guy hadn't written a book in ages, but his blog was updated daily with jokes and memes. The new post was titled, "It's the end of the year. Here's some pro tips for getting free stuff." 1. Open your Bank of America app. You can buy the new iPhone 15 for just $1.99. You just need to have a balance of $20 million to get the coupon. Everyone has $20 million, right? 2. Download the Citibank app and get a free $4,900 Amazon gift card. You just need to deposit $6 million. You've definitely got $6 mill lying around. 3. Go to the official Rolls-Royce USA website, scroll to the owner's portal, enter your phone number, and get a free bottle of Pappy Van Winkle. Who doesn't own a Rolls-Royce? 4. This last one is the easiest. Open Venmo, go to Add Money, and add $1 million to your balance. A pop-up for a free $288 reward will appear. You've got $1 million, right? Leo stared at the screen. He actually had $1 million now. That $288 reward. Should he claim it? The next morning was bright and clear. Leo woke up on time, though he felt a little tired. He'd stayed up late and woken up once in the middle of the night disoriented. It was only when he heard Jordan's familiar snores that he felt grounded enough to fall back asleep. His biological clock woke him at the usual time. He finished his morning routine just as Sean was getting up. Jordan and Alex were still sound asleep. Sean tiptoed to his computer while Leo prepared his honey water, checking the temperature before stirring in a large spoonful and drinking it down in 2 long gulps. After a quick trip to the bathroom, he headed downstairs for his run. Winter workouts truly tested one's resolve. The dorms had no heating, and the only warmth came from the small space being packed with 4 bodies. The moment he stepped outside, the cold air bit at his face. He wondered if Professor Reed would be out in this weather. He'd read somewhere that morning wasn't the best time to exercise because of higher carbon dioxide levels in the air, but online articles said something different every week. He did a thorough warm-up on the same athletic field where he'd been pacing and talking on the phone last night. At this early hour, someone was already there, book in hand, circling the track while reading aloud. The field belonged to the lovers at night and the grinders in the morning. Leo had nothing but respect for people who worked that hard. It was never too late to start. He ran out of the dorm complex toward his usual spot and saw Professor Reed, already there, exercising under the trees. She stopped and greeted him. Leo said good morning and asked how Dr. Croft was doing. She was much better after you worked on her yesterday, up and about for a while. But the pain came back last night. This morning, she said she couldn't lift her arm again. Leo remembered his massage skill lasted for 3 days. It figured Dr. Croft's pain would last at least that long. After my run, I'll grab some breakfast for you both. Then I can take another look at her. All right, you go on and run, Professor Reed said, resuming her exercises. With his new daily quest accepted, Leo started his run. It was freezing, but once he got moving, it was manageable. He decided he needed a new route. The lakeside path was too exposed to the wind. Tomorrow, he'd try running around the academic buildings. The big track near the women's dorms was ideal, but he was hesitant to go there. A guy had been called out on the campus social media page for frequently working out there. They'd called him a creep, saying he stared at the girls. The guy had tried to explain that he was just severely nearsighted and had to squint to see anything without his glasses, but the damage was done. It was a messy situation, and Leo decided it was best to avoid any potential misunderstandings. He explored a new route today, running through the main part of campus. It felt good to stretch his body and clear his head. Afterward, he went to the student strip to buy breakfast. His favorite was still the legendary breakfast burrito from the local spot. It was a Bridgeport specialty, and he knew he'd miss it when he graduated. The owner, a woman with a killer figure who wore a tight black turtleneck, even in the cold, had the most popular food truck on the strip. The burritos were a bit of a splurge for breakfast, especially when you added steak, sausage, shrimp, eggs, and crispy potatoes. Leo checked with Professor Reed for any dietary restrictions. She was fine with anything, but Dr. Croft didn't eat onions or cilantro. He ordered 4 deluxe yacht party editions, making sure Dr. Croft's was onion and cilantro-free. He carried the breakfast to the faculty housing complex, where he saw Mr. Roberts, the security guard, already on duty. Just last night, Leo had been playing spades with his son, the dean. Leo handed Mr. Roberts his burrito. The old man was in the middle of talking to his pet birds. "You didn't have to do that, Mr. Roberts said, but he was clearly pleased. He was tired of the breakfast his wife made and had snuck out early today. He hadn't expected Leo to bring him food. "I saw your car wheels were a little dirty the other day, so I hosed them off for you," the guard added with a smile. "Thank you, Mr. Roberts," Leo said. The old man waved it off. "It was nothing. I was bored." Leo glanced over and saw his car parked neatly next to a Lexus. He then headed for Professor Reed's building. She and Ms. Miller lived in different buildings. Otherwise, he might have run into Ms. Miller during the morning rush. Professor Reed's apartment was warm, heated by an electric radiator rather than central air. A window was cracked open for ventilation. The air was thick with the smell of something like icy hot, Professor Reed's folk remedy, no doubt. Evidently, it hadn't worked. When Leo arrived, Dr. Croft looked like she'd been dragged through a hedge backward. Her hair was a mess. "I can't lift my arm to comb it," she mumbled pitifully. "Let me work on your back first," Leo said. "Then you can eat." Dr. Croft nodded and went to brush her teeth, which she managed to do left-handed. She splashed her face with water and wiped it with a cotton pad, wincing when she instinctively tried to use her right arm. How could it hurt this much? Was this normal for a pulled muscle? She looked at her reflection, a wreck. She'd come here to rest and recover, and now she looked like a ghost. The pain had kept her up all night. Leo waited for her to finish, then had her sit down. Yesterday, he'd watched a few physical therapy videos on TikTok, focusing on techniques for muscle strains. He realized he'd made a mistake by just pressing where it hurt. The body was like a puppet on strings. The problem, the shoulder blade, was connected to a point below the neck. Today, he tried the new, more targeted approach. Dr. Croft, bracing for the pain, clutched her phone and started scrolling to distract herself. She was groaning 1 second, then suddenly shouted, "Son of a bitch!" The outburst startled Leo, and he accidentally pressed too hard, causing her to yelp. "You little maniac! Our painting got in, the one I did of you. It's been shortlisted for the Alexander Lucci Painting Prize. The selected works get exhibited. This is huge. Even if we don't win, just being in the exhibition is a massive deal. Holy hell, I'm celebrating with beef jerky tonight." Leo was a little lost. Dr. Croft's accent was getting thick with excitement. Did she just call him a maniac? A triumphant, primal whoop echoed through the apartment. Just then, Leo hit a pressure point, and Dr. Croft let out a blood-curdling shriek. The next moment, he released the pressure, and the pain vanished. "Move your arm," he said. "Does it still hurt anywhere?" She tentatively lifted her arm, expecting a jolt of pain, but there was nothing. "It doesn't hurt?" she asked, bewildered. She swung her arm again. The pain was gone. A muscle strain can be a mix of physical and neurological issues. Sometimes a sudden shock, like a great piece of news, can be enough to jolt things back into place. With the pain gone, Dr. Croft was back to her exuberant self. Being shortlisted for the Alexander Lucci Prize had resurrected the artist in her. She'd gladly trade 10 years of her life for this honor. Humans are wired to be workhorses. 1 second you're on the brink of death, the next a carrot dangles in front of you, and you're off and running again. Leo didn't know anything about the prize, but an ecstatic Dr. Croft gave him a rapid-fire explanation. When he still looked confused, she put it in terms he'd understand. "Okay, right now, one of my paintings is worth about 50,000 bags of artisanal spicy beef jerky. If I get into this exhibition, 50,000 bags will be just the starting price. If I make it to the finals and win, the prize is $5,000 and a solo exhibition at the Pelham Art Center. That's every painter's dream. Your tea thing was a national competition. This is a world championship." She was practically vibrating with excitement, her eyes filled with visions of mountains of beef jerky. Art was a noble pursuit, and her unit of measurement for nobility was spicy meat. Leo watched her dance around the room and figured she'd probably be completely fine by tomorrow. They all ate breakfast together. The breakfast burritos were surprisingly good even after they'd cooled down a bit. Professor Reed didn't offer to pay Leo back, knowing he didn't need the money. Instead, she gave him a cake of aged tea that was 20 years old. To her, of course, 20 years wasn't that long. It was a Gu Fengzai puer. She bought a bunch of it from a young Dr. Sterling back when he was just starting out and selling tea on the side. He'd recommended good, high-quality teas that were unknown at the time. Now, with the market for aged puer exploding, a single cake could sell for over $1,000. Professor Reed stored her tea with scientific precision, so the quality was impeccable. She'd bought so much back in the day that she had to buy a separate apartment just to store it all, complete with climate control. She didn't have much of a social circle that would appreciate it, but she knew Leo was different. Giving it to him wouldn't be a waste. And so, for the price of 2 breakfast burritos, Leo walked away with a tea cake worth over $500. He learned enough from his recent chats with Joy Run to know its value. No wonder no one drank puer anymore. It had become too expensive for casual enjoyment. On his way back to the dorm, Leo messaged the group chat to see if his roommates had eaten. The lazy animals had actually been waiting for him, apparently on the verge of starvation. He said goodbye to Mr. Roberts at the gate and sprinted to the cafeteria to get them breakfast. The cafeteria's offerings, sweet steamed buns, soy milk, congee, fried dumplings, were plentiful but uniformly mediocre. But after starving all morning, his roommates wouldn't be picky. Even with the subpar breakfast, Alex, dressed in his long johns, called him a lifesaver. Leo felt like a long-suffering father to his 3 idiot sons. It had gotten suddenly colder today, but at least the sun was out. "Sean, our written permit test is tomorrow," Leo reminded him. "Make sure you do the practice tests on your phone a few times today. I sent you the link." Sean, his mouth full of a steamed bun, gave him a thumbs up. Alex was gnawing on a cob of corn. "I think I slept on my neck wrong," he mumbled. "It's so stiff. Maybe it's the draft from the window." Leo, who had been about to leave for class, stopped in his tracks. A zealous look came over his face. "I can help with that. Let me take a look. Finish your corn first." "Ah!" A manly shriek echoed through room 402. A moment later, Alex was rotating his head in disbelief. "Whoa, the pain is gone. How'd you do that?" "It felt like my head was just a dead weight on my shoulders, and you just popped it back into place." "That's amazing." Leo, of course, credited his head nurse grandmother. Alex gave him a big thumbs up. He had a cousin who was a medical examiner, but that didn't mean he knew how to fix a stiff neck. With that, his massage task was officially complete. On his way to class, the system's voice sounded in his head. Host has persevered with his running regimen, undeterred by the cold weather. For this excellent display of willpower, Host is rewarded with buff, cold resistance, one day. It's not particularly useful, but now you can experience the thrill of wearing shorts in winter like a true madman. Leo. Host has proactively completed the massage task to the great satisfaction of the target clients. Reward, +0. 1 centimeter. Leo, now 5 feet 9 inches, was very pleased with his progress. 5 feet 9 inches felt like a threshold. It was the minimum height requirement for most background actor casting calls. He strode toward his classroom. The campus was beautiful in the winter. Some trees were evergreen, others had turned yellow and red, and some were bare. A stark, ugly red banner was strung between 2 beautiful trees, flapping in the wind. As Leo walked beneath it, a student taking photos captured the scene. The trees, the banner, and a handsome, well-dressed student with an air of quiet confidence. On the way to class, Leo wondered what to do with his cold resistance buff. It felt like a waste to let it expire without doing something with it. But what? Take off his jacket in the middle of campus? That would just be weird. Then there was the matter of the $1 million. It was strange how a number on a screen could be so disorienting. When he tried to send it back, Ms. Miller had refused, saying they weren't children haggling over pocket money. She insisted he deserved it. Still, it felt wrong. He'd always daydreamed about what he'd do with $1 million, but now that he actually had it, none of those fantasies seemed appealing. He didn't want to buy a house, a car, or luxury goods. His first instinct was to just save it, to hoard it, so he could always be a person who had $1 million. But his newly acquired knowledge of economics told him that was a terrible idea. Money loses value over time. With an average inflation rate of 6 to 7%, $100 today would be worth about $48 in 10 years. His million would shrink to less than half its value. He could invest it, but the stock Ms. Miller had bought was now much more expensive than when she'd first purchased it, and he was hesitant to buy in at a high price. Leo knew that life-changing opportunities often appear in unexpected moments. He thought of an old story. 20 years ago, 2 young men in Shanghai each had $2,000. One bought a state-of-the-art computer and a broadband connection, learned digital art, and had a passionate long-distance relationship that eventually fizzled out. The other bought a small house with a yard in a remote suburb. His girlfriend, who lived in a tiny but central apartment, looked down on the suburban house, and they, too, broke up. Today, the computer is worthless junk. The house is worth over $2 million. Leo understood that he could easily blow through this money on camera equipment, designer clothes, or a fancy watch. But he had learned a lesson from the gifts he'd received from Dr. Sterling and Paige. These things were just objects. It was the person who gave them value, not the other way around. He already possessed an unshakable core. When he got his accounting class, no one treated him any differently. He didn't look any different, even though he was $1 million richer. He took a deep breath, opened his textbook, and focused. He needed to get better at accounting. Now that he had so much money, he couldn't keep track of it all. He knew there was a clear path of progression in the field, from a basic certificate to a CPA, and, theoretically, all the way to an international certification. But there was another, unofficial final boss level for accountants, the true pinnacle of the profession. The day your name appears in the news as Mr. Foster of FCI Danbury. That was the Lifetime Achievement Award. Leo knew he'd never reach that level. He'd be lucky to get a high-level certification. The CPA exam alone cost thousands in prep courses. For now, he focused on studying. With his partition study method, setting a timer for an hour and focusing solely on that one task, he was incredibly efficient. As he reviewed the material, he found that concepts that were once fuzzy were now crystal clear. The time passed quickly. After completing his study task, the system pinged. Host has diligently studied accounting and has mastered the fundamentals of a junior accountant. For this solid foundation, Host is rewarded with buff Midas touch one day. The stock market is a strange and unpredictable place, sometimes swinging wildly based on nothing more than a pawn. Host is advised to choose a stock with stone in its name for a handsome return. Seriously? Leo thought. Is the system giving me investment advice because it knows I have cash now? He searched for stocks with stone in the name and found dozens. He arbitrarily picked the fifth one on the list. 5 was his lucky number. Keystone Materials was trading at $29.02 a share. He transferred $900,000 into his brokerage account and bought shares, leaving the other stock untouched. With the remaining $100,000 plus his existing funds, his liquid cash now totaled over $120,000. He was officially a rich man. He had a date to go shopping with Stella later, and the extra cash gave him a newfound confidence. After class, he headed downtown. He still had 3 more sessions to use at the boxing gym. He gave his name at the front desk, and the receptionist let him in, asking if he had a preferred trainer. He shook his head and asked for a recommendation. He was assigned a female trainer with muscular arms and high pigtails. She had a surprisingly pretty, almost doll-like face with big eyes and fair skin, but her body was powerfully built. Her name, she said, was Robin Wolf. Leo, standing at just under 5 feet 9 inches and looking slim in his workout shorts and t-shirt, felt like a twig next to her. The receptionist had probably paired them based on weight. Despite her muscle, she was in his weight class. He was just glad that Stella, who also boxed, hadn't developed that kind of physique. With the system's help in mimicking movements, Leo picked up the stances quickly and perfectly, but he still needed to learn how to generate power. He followed Robin's instructions: how to punch, how to retract, how to breathe. It was an incredibly cathartic experience. As he threw punches, he felt like he wasn't just building physical strength, but courage. He'd never been a particularly brave person. He couldn't watch horror movies and was scared of the dark as a kid. He avoided fights and high places. Boxing felt like it was fortifying his mind as much as his body. The feeling of landing a solid punch was empowering. The session was exhilarating. Money could buy some amazing experiences. After his hour-long $150 session, he headed to the showers. After showering in a luxurious private stall, he felt refreshed and even a little more handsome. As he came out, a guy walking past nodded at him in recognition. Leo didn't recognize him and felt a flicker of awkwardness. Kyle Jennings was surprised to see Stella Vance's boyfriend here, though on second thought, it made sense. He'd seen Stella here before. It was because he knew she trained here that he'd never try to hit on her. She wasn't just playing around. She trained seriously. Only an idiot like Carter Hayes would be arrogant enough to think he could impress her with his little starter restaurant. Cuz nodded a quick hello and moved on. Leo, assuming he was a fan from his TikToks, smiled and nodded back, a flicker of an influencer persona taking over. This guy carries himself well, Kyle thought. He has that air of old money, friendly on the surface, but with an underlying distance. As they passed each other, the system's voice sounded in Leo's head. Congratulations, host. You have made progress with a potential gold-tier single male, Kyle Jennings. His favorability has reached 60. Please continue your efforts. Kyle Jennings. Net worth, $750,000 allowance. Academic ability, 75. Appearance, 75. It was the first time Leo had encountered someone with such balanced stats, and the first time his own net worth was higher than a target's. Though he reminded himself that was Kyle's allowance, while his was his entire life savings. The encounter was fleeting. Leo finished getting ready and left to meet Stella. They were meeting at a restaurant on the 9th floor of a high-end mall downtown. The restaurant's entrance was marked only by 2 discrete letters. Inside, tall curtains and a pool filled with fresh flowers created an atmosphere of quiet luxury. A handsome host in a tailored suit stood at the entrance. The place looked expensive. Leo remembered the first time Stella had taken him to a place like this. He had been so nervous, so conscious of every movement. But after a few such experiences, he had grown accustomed to it. He learned to see the staff not as judges, but as people just doing their jobs. Once he relaxed, he found that people treated him with more respect. He was led to a private room where Stella was waiting. The room was stunning, decorated in a lavish, almost medieval European style. The view from a window was breathtaking, looking out over a dome-shaped, cathedral-like building and a long, straight avenue lined with trees, their red and green leaves forming a living tapestry. Stella was dressed casually in a cool, taupe-colored sweatsuit. Despite the opulent surroundings, she looked completely at ease. When she saw him, she stood up, and he naturally pulled her into a hug. He let her go, but kept her hand in his as they sat down. Leo followed the trainer, Robin Wolf. He changed into a t-shirt and shorts. The gym was climate-controlled, cool, but not cold, perfect for a workout. The high membership fee ensured the place was never crowded. Robin was an unconventional name, but it fit her. If you ignored her pretty, almost cherubic face, you'd think she was a man. Her voice even had a youthful, slightly high-pitched quality. Leo saw a poster on the wall featuring her. She was a national-level athlete, more than qualified to teach him. In his summer workout clothes, the sub-5'9" Leo looked like a string bean next to her. Robin was heavier than him by a few pounds, but they were in the same weight class. He was thankful Stella's boxing practice had only made her look healthy and toned, not bulky. With the system's movement-mimicking aid, Leo's form was perfect from the start, but he still had to learn how to properly channel his strength. He followed her instructions step by step, punching, retracting, generating power, breathing. It was an incredibly effective stress reliever. He felt that boxing was training more than just his arms. It was building his courage. He'd never been cowardly, but he wasn't brave either. He couldn't handle horror movies, though he was fine with crime dramas. He was a normal guy with a strong moral compass, but not much physical courage. He felt boxing could change that. There was something about throwing a punch that built confidence, strengthening the mind as much as the body. The training session was exhilarating. Being rich was great. This was money well spent. The session cost $150 an hour. Afterward, he went to shower. Robin asked for his number so he could book her again. He added her contact and saw her profile was private, but her banner picture was a wedding photo. In it, she was wearing a wedding dress and lifting the groom, who was in a tuxedo, clean off the ground. That groom was a lucky man. Leo emerged from the luxurious private shower stall, feeling refreshed and handsome. The towels came from a heated cabinet, and wrapping one around himself felt like a warm embrace. As he was leaving, he ran into Kyle Jennings, the guy from before. Kyle was surprised to see Stella Vance's boyfriend here, though he supposed it made sense. Stella was a member, after all. He knew she was a serious fighter, not just a dilettante like himself. Carter Hayes, with his little starter restaurant, thought he was some kind of business prodigy looking down on other second-generation kids. Kyle knew the truth. For guys like them, the best contribution they could make to their family legacy was to not start a business and not squander their inheritance. Kyle gave Leo a nod and a polite greeting. Leo, assuming he was a fan from his online videos, smiled back, his influencer persona kicking in. This guy has a certain presence, Kyle thought. The kind of quiet confidence you see in kids from powerful families. Friendly, but with a wall up. After they passed, the system's voice echoed in Leo's mind. Leo was surprised to learn the guy's name was Kyle Jennings and that his stats were so balanced. It was also the first time his own net worth exceeded the targets, though he reminded himself that Kyle's $750,000 was just pocket money. The encounter was brief. The gym was good about protecting its members' privacy. Leo finished getting ready and headed to meet Stella at the restaurant on the 9th floor of the mall. They planned to eat, then go shopping. This was the part of dating he used to dread. A guy in the neighboring dorm had taken his girlfriend shopping once and ended up taking out an online loan to cover it. Their city wasn't a Tier 1 metropolis, but it was full of entrepreneurs and international companies, so the malls were stocked with all the major luxury brands. The restaurant entrance was minimalist, marked only by 2 black letters. Inside, tall curtains and a pool of fresh flowers flanked a handsome host in a suit. It looked more like a high-end car dealership than a place to eat. Leo remembered the first time Stella had brought him to a place like this, how out of place and anxious he'd felt. But now, after several such experiences, he was used to it. The key was to see the staff as people, not judges. Once he relaxed, he could be himself, and in turn, people treated him with more respect. He was led to a private room. The main dining area was dimly lit and sophisticated, but the private room was on another level. It was decorated in a lavish, medieval European style. The view was spectacular, looking out onto a cathedral-like dome and a long, straight avenue lined with trees whose red leaves formed a vibrant carpet leading to the building. Stella was sitting there, dressed in a chic, taupe-colored sweatsuit, looking completely at home. She stood when he entered, and he pulled her into a natural, easy hug. He let go but kept her hand in his as they sat down.